Welcome everybody to Driving and Dragons. We are here with Driving the Conversation. Going to have some good time talking tonight. Already in the chat, we got Zed Wren, we got the God of Ka, and of course, good old Mikey D, as always, is here ready to rock and roll. As we're letting you guys filter in, I'll go ahead and fill everybody in on what we got going on here. We'll be joined by the Eclectic Goat, all of our favorite editors-in-chief of the TTRPG world, editor, writer, gamer extraordinaire. So she'll be joining us here shortly to talk about writing games and whiskey. Whiskey just because both of us like it. But anyway, speaking of, tonight we're here. John Emerald, Alabama single malt whiskey. It is essentially a peach wood smoked malted scotch that is made in Alabama instead of Scotland. It's good stuff made out of Opelika. If you can get your hands on it, it is worth about it probably punches about 3 weight classes higher than it costs. Anyway, today's show, we are going to be cracking into what I hope is going to be the regular way I do these things. I have the 7 keys for effective TTRPG design. And basically, I kind of came at this from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that Stephen Covey put out years ago about just being productive in general. And I thought about it, and I was designing my own game, the 3612 game. Actually, I do have to give a little shout out here to the OGGM, our good buddy, because last time I had him on, we were talking about my Cyber City Dodge setting for that game, and it's like, hey, let's take the mythical city of Fresno, Nevada, that he does all of his live streams from. Let's turn that into something. And yeah, here in my email today, it popped up. Hey, here's some stuff from Fresno, Nevada. I don't know how you want to use it, but here it is. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. I mean, I'm 2 years behind on making you're sitting here showing me up by making stuff for my game that's not even finished yet. So anyway, I looked into it and I was like, we talked to a lot of designers. We talked to a lot of all different levels. A lot of the people that we get on a lot of these podcasts are designers from the highest levels all the way to the lowest. And that's what we talk about. And so I was like, what makes a good game designer? What makes an effective designer? What are the traits that really make a designer? The difference between somebody who can just make something, call it a game, and put it out, and then the people who can actually make something that really is truly unique. So I talked to a lot of macros. I reached out to Sandy Peterson. I spoke to, obviously, Pundit. I reached out to Mike Merles. I spoke to designers across the board, different games, different levels, all over the place, and different facets of game design, and watched interviews and all that stuff, and came up with these where obviously you would still have to be an effective person, so to speak. And this is not going to solve your laziness. It's not going to solve your procrastination. It's not going to solve the fact that you don't care enough to format a document, or the difference between I put something that's technically functional but nobody cares, and something that actually can catch somebody's eye. And what I want to do is, as I release the videos for the 7 habits, I call them the 7 keys because 7 habits is a trademarked term, and I don't feel like having a discussion with their attorneys because they're pretty aggressive about it. For each one of these keys, I want to have somebody who has some level of professional know-how, some level of experience in that level on to talk about it. And today, we have the Eclectic Goat, who is a professional editor. She not just a professional editor in general and a professional writer, but she does actually do editing for TTRPGs, including having a I don't know if you want to call it a pricing level or not. We'll let her, when she comes on, tell us what she calls it. But she actually offers a service called Let Us Break Your Game, where in addition to editing your game, she and her friends try to break it and make it not work. So she does have some experience in this area, and hopefully she's going to help us expound on I released on the video yesterday. And that is that you must be well read. Plain and simple, you absolutely must be well read. So we're going to bring her on here in about 2 seconds, right after I check some of the chat and get the most important stuff in the universe out of the way, which is shilling. Aha, yes, the all important shilling. And I do need to make sure that I grab a link for for the goat herself as well, because for those who don't know, she has been pretty open about it. She is having some health situations that are happening, and they are not exactly cheap. So she does need the help of the community. So we will make sure that we get some links posted into chat so that we can get out there and help her. But for now, you will see the link for the ebook for Corvid Codex Volume 1 in the paperback book as well. It's 6x9 full-size trade paperback. It is 7 stories. It is absolutely fantastic. We have 6 different people, including 3 people currently working on TTRPG games, that are writers for this book. And we're in the process of getting Volume 2 put together. The art's all original. It's also from people who've worked on several of the indie games that you love, like Patio Cakes and Rob Necronomicon. His stock art, and there's no telling how many indie games have got his stock art off of Drive-Thru RPG in them. And he's got custom art for each story. So, yes, I do agree right there. It is an amazing cover. He really, really did a fantastic job. And for those who don't know, the car they're leaning on is a 1974 Dodge Dart, which and donated a 74 Dodge Dart for me to restore, for me to give away to somebody off this channel, which is what all the money from the channel goes to, unless I do like a specific charity stream. I'm working on getting the money to tow an inoperable vehicle from New York to Alabama, which is not cheap. But that is, by the way, what the goals for all the super chats and everything is for. That's what it goes to. But that we'll be restoring that as well. But anyway, book is fantastic. Jump in, buy yourself a copy. It's $15 for the paperback, which is fantastic. It is $5 for the ebook version, and this will be, I think this will be music. Started the process of getting the second revision out that corrects some glaring typos that I screwed up myself when I was getting the final edit put together, including something that I will go to my grave being mortified by, where I used the wrong who's in a note from the editor. That right there just wounded me to my soul when I caught it after I got the book. And I was like, oh no, that's okay. We got it fixed. Second revision's going out. Everybody check it out. So let's check some chat, and then let's bring on the goat. Let's see here. Try the dead. Yeah, his OGGM. He's talking about OGGM's Leviathan City, which looks really cool. But he made Fresno, Nevada, which is a weird inside joke on his channel, city that doesn't exist, that he broadcasts from. He made that specifically for my setting, so I'd be kind of a jackass if I didn't use it. Plus, at first glance, it's really cool. But yes, that would be an awesome Whale God cyberpunk setting. I mean, I'm down for it. And when we get into tonight's topic, that's the kind of thing. Wow, why are we not? There we go. Live near Fresno, California, and I should set it there. Much more fantastic what goes on in Fresno anywhere on the planet. It's not going to be more fantastic than Fresno, Nevada, because Fresno, Nevada does not actually exist. With me, I'm having some latency issues here. Mikey D, let's define terms here. Are we talking system designers or everything TTRPG? Actually, this would be everything. I think it's probably just like anything else in the world. Once you get into the level of full-on system and game designers, it's going to be just more pronounced. But it's effective. Even to be perfectly honest, I could call them keys for being an effective game master, because unless you're doing the whole no prep, I roll everything on a chart and I have no creativity thing, you absolutely need these kind of traits. These things would absolutely help you in terms of being a better game master. So even all the way down to the I'm just designing something for my table, these will be effective. Let's see what we got here. I was saying he loves the Saunders shade. I'm not throwing shade at Condor. I mean, he shades himself, but still. Yeah, we were talking back about your about your system there. And then of course, good old crap phone thinks that it is easy to break games. And I have to say, absolutely, 100%. Thank you very much. A happy owner of Corbin Codex. Tell me what your favorite story is in the chat, and I will pass that along to the author, because I'm sure they will love to hear it. Let's break your game. Progressive maintenance in the form of power. Bad way to put that. Of course, Miss Goat herself is very, very active here in the chat. And look at that. Should have had an editor. I am an editor. I just missed it. I didn't edit my own stories, though. We collectively edited that. I'll give you that. And to be perfectly fair, back in my professional days, I was a content editor, and my wife was the line editor, format editor, and she always caught stuff behind me. I'm way better at making sure that something is structured well and flows well, and it makes sense and provides the information that's entertaining and effective and that sort of thing, and is insightful than I am at, oh my God, I missed an apostrophe. Someone who will come in here and hit me with my own book and tell me that letters were transposed, or a period was not at the end of a paragraph or something like that. So without further here we go. Gonna have to give a lecture about why people can't edit their own work. I didn't edit my own work. I edited the other work. Though you are correct, the piece that is technically my own work that I also edited was the note from the editor that has the wrong who's at the end. But only in the first version. I fixed it. All righty. Here we go. Everybody say welcome to the Eclectic Goat in her original red. We're doing some Lupin the Third here with the original Red Jacket version. How you doing, Miss Goat? And we're not hearing her. I don't know if we're not hearing her because of me, or if we're not hearing her because of her.
Let's take two.
How's there that? You are.
Better? All right.
Much better. How are things up in Manning?
Too many settings. Yeah, I couldn't get OBS functioning properly, and it has been a long time since I used StreamYard, so I am still wearing the original red in this version.
There you go, guys. First edition Goat only on Driving the Conversation.
And double fisting it, you'll notice.
That's right. No so what do you have in your other one? Do you have in your other avatar?
A book.
A book. That's right.
That was one of the reason I made the changes, was that I started getting so much of my business started coming from my YouTube channel that I decided I should probably look a little more professional and a little less alcoholic. So
well, hey, you're on the right string. And I should probably send you a bottle of this, because I seriously I should probably ship you one.
I mean, I always love to try new whiskey, but I did realize the other day that being kind of, I'm cheap. We'll just put it right out. I'm cheap. I do tend to actually be more of a bourbon person than a proper, what most people would consider proper whiskey.
I don't know if everybody else did, but I missed a chunk of that because we are having a little bit of a glitchy connection issues here. You have it right here, guys. The original, the authentic experience of semi-rural Alabama and backwoods Maine.
StreamYard has the hiccups.
Haha, that's right. We're going to blame StreamYard. That's one of those keys. Blame other people. Key 0. So,
and apparently I'm fighting somebody over their editing.
You are?
I was informed on my own editor fight me.
Did I say that?
No, the God of Ka did.
Oh,
I was reading your chat.
Oh, you are. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we are. You are my own editor fight me. Well, I mean, so was Condor DM Ka. He was also his own editor.
Ooh, that was harsh.
I mean, I know you're trying to fix his game, but you might want to fix all of his mistakes.
That was harsh.
Yeah.
I mean, I really tried to avoid that whole thing. And then he just kind of came out of nowhere and decided he was going to like shit all over me online for like 2 days. So
he does like, that. He catches somebody catches his eye and he just dumps all over them without knowing who they are, or I mean, knowing what he's talking about.
Yeah, he insulted someone else, and I made a joke about it, trying to like lighten the mood. And he decided he was going to take it personally, I guess, and then just proceeded to take off.
Yeah,
and then he blocked me, and then proceeded to continue to insult me on his own line.
And what a joke is. Yeah, he does not understand what a joke is. He does not understand somebody trying to diffuse a situation. He has all the social grace of a fart in church, and everything is personal. Like, it's all a personal attack. I probably gave him the most fair review of his game that he will get from anybody. And his response was to say, hater stole his game, which I didn't, pirated his game and, stole pirated copy and just did it just to hater. And then he turned around and reviewed his own. Actually, this might actually hurt your head a little bit yourself, because I doubt you know this. He reviewed his own game. And the way it was a fair and impartial review is he plugged the file into ChatGPT and he gave it the prompt, give this a good review based on, give this a good review.
Yeah, and I'm sure what his argument would be, good he review. Meant a proper review. But of course,
I'm sure that's what he thinks he meant.
Yes.
But what ChatGPT did was give him a favorable review.
Why I am. Am I stalling out now?
I don't know. It's probably both of us in tandem here. So chat probably heard everything you said and I didn't.
That's all right. We can get through the hiccups.
That's right. We can.
Basically, scratched the majority of his game. Here. I kept the D100 and the Cat Girls. Huh. Sorry. Every time I hear the word Cat Girls, all I can think of is like terrible, terrible anime.
That's exactly what I do too. But this is a great example here too. Harmony Ginger said your mom to something, and I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. It was literally like a your mom response, like totally deadpan, totally satirical, totally nothing. Condor went off for weeks about how disrespectful she was about his dead mother and how dare he drag his dead mother into this. And it's like nobody here gets that, dude. Like, I mean, nobody is on your side. I mean, it was bad.
There's got to be a mental health something or other there. I mean,
I think so, but let's move on from Condor.
Yeah.
Mike D tells us that the stream is most lolcal that ever lolcal because I missed. Yeah, he says that the stream seems to be stalling out a little audio wise. Hopefully, it'll level back out.
So the real life fake wizard was having a huge amount of trouble with StreamYard the other day doing the same thing. So I suspect it's StreamYard.
Oh boy,
because the real life fake wizard like has a ridiculously expensive, nice setup, and he was still having issues. So
okay, so there we go, guys. That is the official word. We are blaming this on StreamYard.
I mean, Eraserhead blames everything on EVMux, so it only seems fair.
I think that's fair. I do too. I think that is totally fair. This has nothing to do with my eternal laziness and not running an Ethernet cable from my router. So let's talk about these keys. What we brought our friend the goat here on to talk about is the first key, which is being well read. And the best way to put this, all right, this is the most complete way to put it. Every single designer that I spoke to, every designer that I got an interview from, everything that I read, watched, looked at, said the same thing. You always have to be well read. But the most explicit way it was put was that Alexander McCrease, who is, he founded The Escapist, he was the editor-in-chief of The Escapist. He's a professional game designer on the level that if I remember correctly, he actually worked with West Point in designing actual war games that have to simulate things like we're at war with Russia. So way far beyond the level of, how do we abstract hit points? And, very, very well known for being an extremely academic game designer. And what he said, the way he said it was, you must be well read diversely to be polymathic, but intimately and deeply in your own genre. So saying that, you need, like, if you're going to do a fantasy game, you need to read libraries of fantasy, but you also need the, even the romance or the drama reading or the classics to give you that extra flavor that comes in from the outside. And the way I took it is nothing new under the sun, right? And in my video, I used Hamlet as an example. I can take, there are 14,000 modern interpretations of Hamlet. Sons of Anarchy is Hamlet on motorcycles with white Nikes and a Dynaglide. But it seems whole and unique and wonderful to everybody who saw it because either you were never interested in Hamlet or you didn't recognize it because of the anachronisms and the translations and the changes necessary to bring it into that genre. And that's what makes your game look. Goat, you're one of the most well-read people out there. You are the lover of whiskey notes and classics. So what do you think?
I mean, so I think you're right. I think being well read is important, but when you're looking at not necessarily games but books, there is a huge thing about you need to basically read everything that's going to be your competition. And I've always thought that was a terrible, terrible idea. Because if you only read your competition, everything's going to sound the same. I mean, this is how that stupid romantasy has taken over the genre. Nobody's doing anything new or different because everybody's only reading the same genre that they're writing. I can go into a bookstore, pick up a book, read the blurb on the back, and 90% of the time I can predict the last page of the book, because I've done this. I've gone in, read the blurb, and said, this is how the book's going to end. Flip to the last 2 pages of the book, and that's how the book ends. The protagonists are all the same, the antagonists are all the same, and it's because they're all reading the same stuff. On the other hand, the most interesting person who ever approached me about a gaming contract had played a few sessions of D&D, decided they didn't like how it played, and then for 20 years they never touched another game. They didn't read games, they didn't play games, they didn't do anything. They just decided they were going to write their own game based on a half a dozen sessions of D&D. With I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's an astonishingly large number of people who write games don't play games. So I think you actually need to take it a little further. It's not just that you need to be well read as far as books go. You need to be very well rounded when it comes to genres, and you need to be well played when it comes to games.
I think that's actually probably a a very good way to put it. Being well played. I'm not well, and this may just be me speaking. I'm pretty good at being able to visualize things. That's always been something that I've been good at, and I'm pretty good at reading a game and kind of visualizing the play. And 9 times out of 10, if I read a game and I'm like, I think this is going to be a problem, I think that's really good, a really good mechanic, I think that's not so great, I turn out, I play the game, and I'm absolutely right. And then I grift every single thing that's good and put it into my own games. Not necessarily my own games, like design wise, but like my D&D games, pick up things like or sanity mechanics from other games. But I think that is generally that there is a truth that you need to play at least a handful of sessions of various different games to see how the things work in action, because there's a big difference between the way things look on paper and the way they play out at the table. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's where kind of what the broken games come into is I think a lot of times your busted mechanics, I think, and this may be wrong. It may be. This is me speculating. But I have a gut feeling that a lot of the really bad busted mechanics are the ones that didn't see a lot of playtesting and didn't actually come from something that had already been played out in the wild. Dragons.
Yes and no. One of the other things I have come across a lot is the people that think playtesting means I'm going to run this game for a bunch of my friends. The problem is that you already know how the game is supposed to run. So even if you've written something in a way that's confusing, you're not going to see it because you know what it's supposed to say. And so there are mechanics that don't work simply because you've written them differently than they actually read to other people.
That goes back to what you were saying about not being able to edit your own work, because if you've written something and you're reading it and you're going back trying to find the flaws, trying to find the issues and stuff in it, you can't really see them because your brain is auto correcting everything. Know what you say.
Yeah, there's that, but there's also there are also the people that say, well, I'll play the game and I'll let one of my friends run it. But you're there. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to be honest, or they're not going to be able to be honest. I mean, if you look at professional companies, I have done professional editing for game companies. They go out and they find total strangers who are not familiar. I did a play test of a Gumshoe adventure once, and they were specifically looking for people who weren't even familiar with Gumshoe because they wanted it to be an introduction to the game. And by coincidence, that was one game I'd never played. So we did a play test that um, of that adventure, and it definitely had issues that they hadn't noticed. And they had originally had play testers who weren't big gamers. They didn't have a huge amount of experience, and my I'll Break Your Game group
Yeah.
they all have 30 plus years experience in a bunch of different genres. And so, yes, I do have one power gamer, just for chat's benefit. But they all have something that they do differently. And I get that group specifically for playtesting because they all will come at the game from a different direction and they'll all play a different type of character. And that's the best way to find where the flaws are. So I have one power gamer. I have one just weird gamer. They like to just find odd combinations and put them together,
Yeah.
and see if your game can adapt it or not. Um, I have one gamer who just has horrifically terrible luck. I kid you not. If he doesn't roll more than a half a dozen crit fails in a game, it's amazing. And actually, that's one of the defining features. Like, if he can have terrible, terrible luck and still have a good time, that's a good game.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Give me 1 second. Apparently, I
Sure.
need to let the dog in.
Yeah, that happens to me every time I try to do video streams. My dog will want to go out within like 5 minutes of.
Well, I mean, mine's out on the deck, and my wife apparently let him in, and she shot me a text message, and she said, "Let the dog in so that he can sleep next to you and not be out in the heat."
I've discovered that mine does not like me talking to myself on the headphones because I can video game all day and he doesn't care. But when I start talking to chat through the headset, he gets very upset. And then he's like, I want out. Let me out of here. Mom's gone crazy. She's talking to herself. He's an old kind of neurotic.
To ignore me for the next time being. He's over there being lazy. But yeah, we actually have to do that. But gotta let Mr. Lucas over there, Lucas the Longshanks, in here to be my beagle on stilts hiding in the corner.
Oh, it's a beagle.
He is a beagle, probably greyhound cross.
Oh my God.
There was a backyard breeder who bred beagles, and something got in and got a hold of them, and we rescued the litter, and we brought him home and kept him. So he is the vet says all-American hound. He's related to every hound dog in America.
Yeah, we've never quite
on still like greyhound legs. He's like a beagle on greyhound legs.
That's crazy. I mean, beagles are dangerous as it is.
Oh yeah, he's very dangerous. He thinks he's a pit bull as long as you're on the other side of a gate.
Oh no, I meant dangerous in the sense that so I rescued one and it ended up with my parents because I was living in an apartment and my parents live on 40 acres. Mm-hmm. That dog could climb the fridge.
This one does not do a lot of jumping and climbing. Like I said, he's everybody's best friend, unless you're on the other side of a gate, because he's tough whenever there's a barrier between the package delivery guy and him. Mm-hmm. So he's, like I said, he's a Rottweiler, Pit Bull, German Shepherd cross. If there's something between you and him, so you can't get to each other, but the second there's not, he's a sissy. Like, he's afraid of the cats. It's pretty funny. I've got one cat that enjoys trapping him in the foyer because it will stand at the end of the foyer and the dog will not pass him unless there is unless I stand between him and the cat.
I mean,
So he's a
I've seen some terrible cats. So.
yeah, he is a huge sissy. However, this dog is not allowed to have his head ever. If he gets off a leash and he's not
Mm-hmm.
roped in, I mean, he is 100% greyhound at that point. He is going
Oh,
30 miles an hour, 30, 40 miles an hour, and he is running in whatever direction has the most open ground.
oh yeah. My parents' beagle did the same thing. He would just if he got off a leash, he was gone, and he'd come back when he felt like it.
Yep.
I have two dogs. I have one that is a who the fuck knows. Sorry, I should have asked if cursing was allowed on the stream.
I don't give a
Um,
shit. Are you kidding me? I got less than 1,000 subscribers. We only get super chats here. Hint, hint, chat.
if you have 500, well, I guess hours matters. I hit subscribers before I hit hours, so I was
I
gonna
hit
say
hours.
you. Oh well, you should only need 500 subscribers. So
I do get some little ad revenue, but that's like I said, I don't do this channel to make anything. I literally, my whole plan is to give away every dime this channel makes. So in the form of fixing up a car and giving it away. So, but
nice.
yeah, if YouTube gets mad about poo-poo words, I'm not mad. But that does give me a great opportunity to shill more and post Corvid Codex Volume 1 paperback book link in the chat if you want to buy a copy, because it's awesome and you should.
Support the cars.
That's right. Support the cars. Support the cars. Support the guy who talks about the cars. And don't forget to throw a link in the private chat so that we can support you still being here.
Yeah, I never thought I was going to get monetized. I mean, everything I do is so niche. But I have to say, I don't make very much money, like $100 a month or something. But man, when the medical bills started rolling in, that $100 a month is $100 a month.
There you go. Apparently, we got a question incoming, so as soon as he gets it, we'll get to it, and we might want to get back on topic here, but yeah. So being well read, the way I look at, oh, here we go. Let's go ahead and do the question first. How about that?
When is a game allowing
It
too
ruins
much failing?
consequences. That's a little bit of a convoluted question. I think what we've got here is when a game allows you to get I'll use an example. The good old no and no but or yes and situation. So it's like when a game mechanically, when you've built into a game a mechanic which allows, oh, you failed, but you get something out of it. At what point are you ruining consequences? So let's say I got an example here. I want to say it is the Mongoose Conan Hyboria game, where when you fail rolls, you develop like, I forgot what they're called, but it's like hero points. So your failures give you like a dice pool that you can spend later to have like a great heroic success. So you fail, or your big failures actually give you something that gives you a better success later on. What he's saying, at what point are you allowed to, you've mechanically built into your game something that allows you to fail upward, but now we don't have consequences anymore, where it's like every failure is like, well, who cares? I get a bonus die next time.
Well, I mean, I think that kind of answers its own question, is if there are no consequences and you're better off failing, that seems kind of silly. I would say, though, that it's very dependent on the game, because we tend to talk about, D&D or D&D spin-offs or Conan occasionally, but there are a lot of games out there like Toon. Like, failure is part of the point. It's like, it's what makes it funny. Paranoia, you start out with 7 clones specifically because you're gonna die and it's gonna be funny. The game, the goal of the game isn't really to succeed in your mission, it's to be as amusing as possible. Invaders, spelled with a Z on the end, is a very similar game. Like, failing is actually built into the characters. You're supposed to be an incompetent minion. So I think forgetting that those types of games exist gives us a tendency to want to do this kind of all or nothing. But most of us, I think most of us do either do, we're kind of stuck in certain genres, fantasy or sci-fi or cyberpunk or um I make a point every so often to go find a genre I haven't played in a really long time and play it just so I kind of try not to get into that trap. Um, I am running I am running at a local, well, semi-local. Local here is 2 hours away. Uh, convention at the end of this month, and there are 8 slots, I think, and I'm running 8 games out of 8 genres from 8 indie developers.
There you go.
Um, and on top of it, I'm running 2 in-person games from totally different genres. And I'm going to be running 2 online games from totally different genres. Because there's part of that being well-rounded and staying well-rounded. Because
Yeah, I think
it's
that's absolutely true. I mean, you're actually touching on one of the much later keys. I believe it is key 4. I'd have to go back and look at my list. But one of the keys is that think first in settings, then in systems. Meaning that the system should always be subservient to the setting, or not necessarily the setting, because setting kind of makes people think of like, oh, Forgotten Realms, but more like, I guess you should say the genre or the feel of the game. The mechanics, like for example, in Toon, having failure mechanics, like having mechanics that cause you to fail on a regular basis don't matter because they generate the comical slapstick Toon feeling.
yeah.
But if you did that in Call of Cthulhu, or if you did that in, like, say, Cyberpunk, I mean, if you did that in Cyberpunk, everybody would be dead every single time they got into a fight.
Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to say is that like trying to all or nothing. I see on Twitter all the time. I see these all or nothing questions, and they are so obviously aimed at D&D or OSR or something like that. And I'm like, you're very specifically aiming this question as if someone's developing an OSR game, but not all games are going to be OSR games.
Absolutely.
And so to imply that there's a right or wrong when there's really only a right or wrong for this genre doesn't really work terribly well. And then I get in trouble because I'm like, well, actually.
We're all like, well, actually, if you have a YouTube channel, YouTube may as well be wellactually.com, because that's what we do.
Well, I mean, what makes me a good editor is the fact that I like things very precise. There are not very many gamers out there that are going to spend, 4 to 6 hours a day determining whether or not someone's comma is in the right space.
That's correct. That's absolutely right. And
Gamers
if
do
it's the
not tend to be
Oxford
an
comma, it's
organized.
always correct.
Gamers do not tend to be the most organized bunch, and normally.
You are absolutely 100% correct on that. There's no doubt. And that's why we all have a game we're designing, but only like 2% of us have a game that actually got close to finished.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even. Yes, part of it is game design, though I find that there are some great games that come out, but like they take years to write because people get sidetracked by other things, and the attention span isn't necessarily there. You can always tell the difference. So Tom Kane has been on my show several times. Tom Kane wrote for GURPS for years. He wrote for Shadowrun for years. He wrote for Ars Magica. And then he went on to become a college professor in England. And you can see it. The funny thing is that he went on to specialize in things like. Oops, sorry. I think we overlapped there for a second. Say it again.
We did. It's our wonderful dueling bad internet connections. Speaking of effective TTRPG designers who have awesome stuff going on, including right now his amazing Kickstarter, and somebody who is clearly the kind of person who would tell you to go hire the eclectic goat to edit your game, Agile Monk. Always welcome here. Always somebody that I love to see here, and somebody who will hint, almost definitely end up being on one of these streams to handle one of these keys, because let's face it, Agile Monk knows his stuff, and he clearly has a very good product up on Kickstarter right now, which, by the way, if you try to post it in chat, I'll try and make sure that it comes up for you there, Agile, to get your Kickstarter there. But solid and excellent editing is absolutely a must. And they must understand that which they are editing, which means if you have a game, you need somebody like the Eclectic Goat, who is both an excellent editor and understands games and reads a whole bunch, because she understands different genres.
One of the reasons I got into gaming was because I discovered it was really hard for game designers to find editors. You know, I'd done several novels before, but most editors are not game players, and most game players, like I said, aren't going to sit around for a couple hours and make sure your commas are in the right place. And actual editors get very confused because they're like, why is the word player capitalized every time? This is not a proper noun.
Well, it's player character. Why are these capitalized? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so here's one of my, I'll give you a little side note here. One of my pet peeves: the word player should not ever be capitalized, and yet it is.
Really?
So it's game terms that are capitalized. Player is not a game term. Character is a game term. And yet we never capitalize character, and we always capitalize player.
What about player character?
Most people just write PC after the first time.
True.
But
which
I see player all the time capitalized, and I see character not capitalized very frequently. And I'm like, but if you're talking in the game, the character is the game term, not the player. I mean, you don't read board game instructions and see like player capitalized every time.
Fair, very fair. And I guess that is a. Actually, I had a question there that I just.
There's my pet peeve.
No, I actually just had a question that's along those lines that is now suddenly slipping out of my brain here, because that is a very good point. So actually, I don't remember what it was. I have this thing. For one, for what I've written so far, I have found a couple of different people who are in no way gamers. None. Like they don't play games. They don't play TTRPGs. They think we're nerds. They think it's, boring, and they think it's cute that we play these kind of games when we're adults. However, I get them to read my book for my rules or my documents for me. And why do I do that? Because I want to see. I'm simple. It's like, hey, you mother of 2 teenage children, do you think you could give this to your kids? Do you think they could understand it? Do you understand what it is? And if you needed your 8-year-old to play, if you wanted your 8-year-old to be able to join, do you think you could run this for them? Do you think you could understand it? That's the approach I've always taken to any kind of design. And that's what I think about when I'm writing mine, is I should be writing this so that a rank amateur virgin who's not even interested can understand what I'm doing. And when it comes to like PC and stuff, how do you feel about the idea of open of terms? Like this is what this means. When you see 4D4, it means roll 4 dice with 4 sides. When you see PC, it means player character, which means a character in the game which is controlled by one of the players that is not the game master. Whereas the NPC, the non-player character, is a character or an entity within the game that is controlled by the game master. Do you think that that is actually something? Because I've heard it both ways. I've heard some people who turn around and say, no, you're writing indie games. the only people who are ever going to buy your game are going to be people who are already deep in the hobby and looking for that second game, that third game, that fifth game. You're just wasting paper space and wasting money by putting in things like, this is what 4D4 means. When I think it's like, I want somebody who has no idea what this is, who picks it up at a garage sale to say, oh, that's cool. What are your thoughts on that?
Convoluted. So one of the first things I always ask someone when I'm doing the game is, what is your goal with this and what is your target audience? If their target audience, if they tell me their target audience is men in their 40s looking for a new game that's similar to D&D, but they don't want to support Wizards of the Coast anymore, I'm going to look at that way differently than somebody like you who says, my goal is to get new people into gaming. My target audience is non-gamers. Now, first of all, I think that is an excellent goal because I think you have a much larger perspective audience. But it also means you're going to have to do a lot more marketing. And far too many people designing games want to design a game, stick it on drive-through RPG, and then never touch it again. And then they get upset because it gets lost in the umpteen million games that are lost in drive-through RPG. I think in general, unless you are specifically targeting non-gamers, I think a page that just says, here are some quick terms, especially if you have a couple of terms that aren't normal gaming terms. Because, that's one of the things I kind of get at is, why are you making a new game that sounds exactly like, the game that is already out there and has all the exact same terms and all the exact same races and all the exact same classes? Throw in a couple of things that are a little different. Now, okay, this is another pet peeve. By that, I do not mean change the word game master to something really obscure just so you can say, well, it's not a game master, when it's exactly a game master. Like, don't change words for the sake of changing words, but like, give me a word for what makes your game different. If you have a specific thing with a specific name that makes your game different, that's going to attract my attention. And that makes it worth having a key in and of itself. Because then the first thing they're going to see when they open the book is, here's a new thing I've never seen before. And the gamer who's played 20 million games is just going to skip that page anyway. The same as they're going to skip the page with the safety rules and the game that says, what is a role-playing game? They're just going to skip that section. They're going to go right to the section they want.
That's very good points, which, I mean, to my own credit, I guess I actually put in there, it's like, hey, if you already know this stuff, it's worth reading over again, but skip to page X and this is where the game content is. But I think you're absolutely right on that. One thing, and I'm gonna give a little bit of a plug here, and this is going way back plug. This was a guy who asked me to review his game back when I had like 20 subscribers, and it's not paid in any way, but he's like, hey, here's my game. And he did this Colonies and Conquerors game, which is really, really awesome. It's really unique. I think it's all Age of Sail stuff. It's by Spirit Bear Studios. If you Google Spirit Bear Studios, you can find his page. I think it's using, but he calls this guy Tall Taylor. The Tall Taylor is what he calls his game master. That's what triggered me to bring this up. Not just so that I can plug his stuff, because, loyalty goes a long way, and it is a good game. I think it actually deserves some looks. But Tall Taylor, to me, it was so awkward. It rolled off the tongue so weirdly. When I first read it, when I was first reviewing it, I was like, God, this Tall Taylor thing, just call him a game master. Please just call him a game master or a storyteller or something, because it was so awkward. But I look it up and I'm like, this is actually legitimately correct. Like, this is this is the appropriate term for someone who tells tall tales and stories like that. And where do the tall tales come from? Your Paul Bunyans and your John Henrys and stuff like that. They all come from that 1600 to 1800 type range.
What was the game about?
The game is about 1600 to 1800 type range of the age of sail and adventure and the age of colonialism. So it fits to be tall tales.
Is it about myths?
It's very North American. It's very North American, expansionist centric. So think French. Don't think 100 Years War, or I'm sorry, not 100 Years War. Don't think 40 Years War. Think French and Indian War, the North American section of it. Think, Haitian Rebellion. Think piracy. Think colonization, all the way through Lewis and Clark, Manifest Destiny, westward expansionism, the same era that all the quote unquote tall tales came out of. That's the era that it's set in. And the classes are things like Native American style shamans and colonial settlers. So it fits. And I bring it up because I think it does work, and it works in the way you say it works. Why? Because I'm sitting here years after I reviewed the game, and the second you say something about, changing the name of the game master to something different, it better have a reason. That's the first thing that pops into my head is, man, he called him the Tall Tailor, and made me go look it up and make sure that that was correct.
And see, 95% of people aren't going to do that.
No, 95% of people are not going to catch it. It will be an earworm. 90% of people actually works. So I think his might actually be a good example of what you said, where it better be something that's unique and fits.
I mean, I have seen it once in all the games I've looked at, because the first thing I say when I see somebody has changed the word game master to something else, I say, what is the goal with this? And most of the time it's people just saying, well, I wanted it to sound different. Once and only once have I ever gotten an answer that I thought worked well, and it was a game that was based in Japanese myths. And like not anime, but like actual like Japanese historical legends. And he called his game master the sensei, because the entire intro to his book was about setting a different type of mindset for the game than you would get with a Western game, because the game ran very differently than most Western games.
And I think that's exactly what I think we're kind of simpatico here.
Yeah.
That's right. Because I did kind of had a very similar conversation with the gentleman who runs Spirit Bear Studios and made this game about Paul Taylor. Because my immediate thing was, this is, even though I found out it is actually correct and it's not just some made up term, like, this is so awkward to say.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to him about it, he flat out told me, he goes, I want you to think about going out and lassoing a tornado. I want you to think about John Henry racing the steam engine with a hammer. I want you to think about Christopher Columbus trying to sail around the world and get to India faster.
And that's fine, but you're going to have a really narrow audience in that case.
Oh, true. I mean, I think you got a fair criticism there for sure, but it's definitely way different than the guy who just decides that the story speaker is what I'm calling mine. It's like, why the hell are you calling him the story speaker?
Yeah, there was a game I reviewed where the GM was called the Dealer, and it's a Western game, and there is a certain amount of cards involved in it, but there's cards involved in the play, not in the game. And so Dealer really didn't serve any purpose other than, well, it's a Western game, and Westerns, card games.
I would agree on that too. Like, if it's Dealer, it better be like about shooting each other in casinos and stuff, or in saloons.
Yeah, it was basically
Cards in this game. Let's check a couple of chats real quick. We'll get right back to that. We'll check the chat first. Because we do have a super chat, and we do also have one that will get us back on topic. So I'm going to save Zed for being awesome and bringing us back to topic. We do have the always wonderful Mac Thompson in chat. He has joined us. Mac is always here supporting, always I know for a fact an owner of Corbin Codex because he told me when he got his copy. So always welcome to see Mr. Mac Thompson, who also decided to throw $4.99 our way for the Bearing Grease Fund. And
Yay,
yes,
thank you for your support.
$4.99 will pay for some bearing grease on the Dodge. So let's see here. We got a couple of things here I wanted to check on. Once again, Agile Monk talking all about why professional editors are critical of creating content. I believe he is talking to Mac there when Mac was asking what we're all about. The topic is supposed to be about being well read and why being well read is extreme. Itself into, of course, the Eclectic Goats editing.
I was going to say, but I'm obsessed. But I'm obsessed with things being precise, and therefore I have to keep complaining about it.
But we've circled around on there on a several different times, and of course we've got all kinds of wonderful stuff here. Since Mac threw us a bone here, I'm going to bring up his list of Harbor Master, Chronicle Master, right? So many other possibilities. Yeah, abbreviation is TT. Say that fast. And then of course stuff like Yarn Spinner and a Game Runner. How does Game Runner sound? I don't know. I mean, like, why don't we just call them Game Master unless you have something that really fits your actual game? And I think that's kind of the point we've all kind of touched on here, is that if you're going to make a change, it needs to be a change that's meaningful and matters.
Yep.
It doesn't just need to be something you're doing it just. Come on. Will GM for Food, another stalwart standout here in the chat. Put it a Western RPG. The obvious Game Master rename is Huckleberry, because I am your Huckleberry.
So for the record, the game that has Dealer as the GM title is in fact named Huckleberry.
Look at that, man.
So the game is called Huckleberry.
Oh, the game is Huckleberry.
Yes. The GM is called the Dealer.
I think there's a missed opportunity there. Heck, I mean, if I'm going to name the game Huckleberry, I'm just going to name the GM Doc. All right.
So, well, the funny thing is that it's vaguely Western, really, but it's really kind of a. Are you familiar with Malifaux?
No, I'm not.
It's a minis game, but it also has a role playing version. And it's basically a Victorian game, but like it takes place in a place called the Weirdness. So it's a little bit like a crossover between a light-hearted Lovecraftian thing and Victorian steampunk. So Huckleberry is basically Malifaux, except in the American Old West instead of Victorian England.
Huh.
And this is kind of what I mean when I say that, like, there are all these people that think they've come up with like a super original thing, and I'm like, actually, your game is basically identical to this one. Have you considered just playing that game?
Well, that's actually how I started the episode on being well read. Is I was like, if you think you've come up with something unique, no, you haven't. But
that isn't necessary. I mean, I have seen unique games and I've seen unique takes on games, but I've also seen people who, like I said, have only played 2 games ever.
You may have something that is extraordinarily obscure, and yours is that nobody understands the thing that's not unique. But that's kind of the other point of the being well read, is it brings in additional flavors, additional solutions to problems, and additional thought processes to everything you're doing, which it may not be unique, but it seems entirely unique. I can pull 500 Sons of Anarchy fans aside, and 2 of them are going to tell me that it's Hamlet on motorcycles.
Yeah.
2. But it's
Yep.
Hamlet.
Well, I mean,
I'll go one. The Lion King is damn near a 1-for-1 word for word copy of Hamlet, and none of them will understand it.
The thing is, though, that there are certain story beats that exist in many stories. That doesn't mean they're bad, and that doesn't mean you're terrible for repeating them. There are many types of games and game themes. You know, Tolkien is always going to play a huge part in a lot of fantasy games.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean you can't find a different way to do it. It's when people just start cloning the same few things over and over again, and they're not trying to put their own spin on it. That's when I go, I mean, why? This is going to be a huge amount. Oh, damn it.
I know the point you're making, because you said, Tolkien's going to be cloned over, but when you have a huge amount of games that are just the same thing over and over again, it very quickly turns into, why am I bothering?
Well, it's not even why. I mean,
in a lot of ways.
I'm bothering because I want people to succeed, and I need to pay my medical bills. But the fact is that people think designing a game is going to be easy, and they're just going to clone some other game and they're going to put it out there, and they don't understand that the writing is going to be hard, and they're going to be people who nitpick rules, which is what I do. And there are going to be, they're going to have to market, and they're going to have to stay in touch with customers, and they're going to have to build a community, and they're going to have to go to conventions. And they don't think about all of that kind of the work that's going to go into it. And so if you want to build a clone of another game, fine, I'll edit it. But I want to make sure that you understand that there's going to be all of this other stuff involved. And do you want to put up with my 400 notes per chapter? Because honestly, I'll tell you right now, I've had like 3 games where they were like, I want you to nitpick really hard. And I said, are you sure? And they said, yes. So I nitpicked really hard. And the game never saw the light of day. They looked at it. I suspect they went off and cried a little bit. And then they just never.
Perfectionism is the death of productivity, because, I mean, there's always going to have to be some give and take. But you're absolutely right. It's a lot of people. What was it Thomas Edison said? Most people miss opportunity because it shows up in overalls and looks like hard work. And that's the truth of it. Which I am going to go ahead and put this up here. We're going to give our flowers where our flowers are due to Zedren. Is there a criteria to determine what reading materials make the cut for reading?
No.
Nope. And I would actually 100% agree. Even really, really crappy writing, garbage writing, still has value, if nothing else than showing you all the mistakes you can make.
I was going to say garbage writing is some of the most important because it tells you what they did wrong. Being able to be analytical about garbage writing is important. If you just look at it and go, well, this isn't any good and I don't really want to read it, then it isn't going to help you. But if you can look at it and say, okay, this is where it went wrong, then you learn not to do that with your own stuff. What is that god awful fan fiction book that like became a huge hit?
All of them.
Oh, but there's one in particular that started the fad. 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, that one's terrible. But I was thinking A Song of Ice and Fire, because it's just a really terrible Wars of the Roses fanfic. But we do have to say thank you to Mercurius. Mayor Trumpet has been struck by lightning, and my super chats have been struck by $1 Australian. Thank you, sir.
Woohoo! One of the things I learned.
Book, by the way.
Huh?
You sold a book, by the way. Tell everybody what that name is again, because Mac is apparently going to buy it.
50 Shades of Grey?
No.
God, thank goodness.
Read the chat.
Oh,
look at the screen.
Lovecraftian Victorian steampunk. Oh, Malifaux. M-A. Hang on a second. I have to. It's spelled weird. This is one of those words I can't do unless I spell it out. Okay, Malifaux. Malifaux.
Ooh,
it is
man,
primarily. It is
I gotta
primarily
buy a copy now. That's the Cajun ending.
That is primarily. It's primarily if you look it up, what you're going to get is a miniatures game, but they have a role playing game as kind of a secondary thing. I reviewed it once. You might want to watch the review before you buy the book.
Hint. Go watch channel. Watch channel first.
I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of it's kind of an expensive book and you might want to know what you're getting into first. It had its ups and its downs.
Let's see here. Let's see what old Max, since Max is the one who brought that up, let's see. Personal choices depend on whether or not I am research reading for a current project. Otherwise, read for enjoyment. Read a classic every now and then. Read to enrich your mind and heart.
Yep.
Which is good advice. And I'm going to tell you that the classics are the classics for a reason. And it's really, really stunning how many classics were like bombs in their. People don't understand this. Moby Dick was lambasted by contemporary critics. It was considered junk.
Well,
until 20 or 30 years after it was written.
Part of the issue is that they did something different. They did something that was not the standard proper quote unquote style of the time. And so they weren't seen as being any good. And it wasn't until later when people recognized, oh, this actually changed a lot of literature. There's a movie version. I heard an interview once, and they were talking about the shift in movies. And the fact that Marlon Brando is single-handedly responsible for changing how men are portrayed in movies. Because before him, all lead actors were suave and good with women and never lost their temper and were intelligent. And all of his characters were really broken. Not necessarily emotional. But there was something really damaged about them. And from that point on, male actors wanted to be Marlon Brando. Like Al Pacino styled himself after Marlon Brando. And it really changed movies in a huge way on that one pivot point. And books like Moby Dick did the same thing literature-wise. They weren't necessarily seen for what they were in their day because it was such a huge change that critics kind of went, ugh. It was too different from what they were used to.
And pulp, in kind of a reverse mirror universe kind of way, pulp is kind of the same way. If we think about pulp, Conan, even some of Lovecraft's stuff, or Solomon Kane, all of these pulp stories that we built Dungeons and Dragons off of, and we really built the especially the TTRPG fantasy basis off of. It was pulp because these were the stories that were so bad and so tawdry and so basic and so not good enough that we wrote them on paper that was made basically recycled garbage paper that was so cheap it was easy to print, so you could afford to throw it away at the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean that's how we got noir movies, which are now some of the basis for some of the greatest movies ever.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just kind of isn't appreciated in its time. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons. Like I grew up during the time when you get beat up for playing D&D. And now, people in their 30s and 40s are coming and saying, "Yeah, I always actually kind of wanted to play when I was younger, but I never dared. Will you teach me how to play?" And I always say, "I'll teach you how to role play, but I won't teach you how to play D&D."
Oh, we got to have some Brando shots fired here. Brando ended up a blathering, bloated whale. I usually turn off Apocalypse, which is hilarious because let's face it, Marlon Brando as a blathering, bloated whale completely steals the show in The Godfather Part 1. And Robert Duvall's great, but let's face it, I mean, nobody really cares about Tom in The Godfather.
I think one of the reasons he did a broken guy so well is because, I mean, either he adopted too much of those roles into himself or he started there. And you don't know
Brando
which.
was a method actor, so there's probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there. If I'm not mistaken, Brando was known as a method actor.
I mean, I'm not surprised that he, didn't end well. I look at
No.
What's his name? Joker, the Joker guy there.
Oh, Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
Or Jack Nicholson, take your pick. Cesar Romero.
Jack Nicholson did a lot. He was a different kind of actor.
He's an interesting character.
But I mean, I'm really surprised that Christian Bale hasn't.
He's a real interesting character. But yeah, Marlon Brando. I think you're right on Marlon Brando. I think there is a little column A, a little column B. But let's face it. I mean, the best people to act a part are the people who are that part in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Though I don't know. I mean, the whole point of acting is to be someone you're not, which in and of itself has to take a toll after a while, especially if you're somebody who always plays bad guys.
Yeah. Constantly getting into that mindset probably does burn you a little bit, which does kind of take us a little bit back to the original topic of that's part of the reason why it's so important to be well read.
Oh yeah.
Because it gives you different mindsets.
So I really dislike the author. But the book, The Monsters Know What They're Doing. If you're designing a game, as much as find a used copy. Do not give that asshole money. But it has some very good points about the fact that not all of your monsters should just function in the exact same way. Not all of your bad guys should function in the same way. The most fascinating bad guys are the ones. I mean, I understand there's a whole lot about, we don't want morally gray characters. But complex characters is a different thing.
True.
So I'm doing, starting this Monday, we're going over a completely unheard of, unwatched television show from the 90s called Harsh Realm. And one of the most fascinating things about it is that you have a very 90s beginnings.
Following up your Babylon 5 series?
The Crusade thing? The Crusade thing was actually because Jacob Ironside is going to be doing Babylon 5, the actual series, and we kind of wanted to give him a little lead into that. But In between seasons of Slice and Dice, I always do something called shows you've never seen. And they're shows that were pretty good that kind of just got overlooked in their time, but that would do better nowadays, or at least in my opinion, would do better nowadays. So it starts with a very 90s hero scene in which you have a guy who runs out, rescues a kid in the middle of a war zone, and is then shot down by a bunch of teenage child soldiers. His buddy runs out, drags him out of the line of fire. They're calling in an airstrike, and he puts a mattress over the both of them and puts his helmet on his buddy's head to save him, and saves his friend's life. So you start out in this first 5 minutes with both of these incredibly heroic characters, one who puts himself in danger for a child, one who puts himself in danger for his friend. And 10 minutes later in the show, one of them is on the good guy's side and one of them is the bad guy's right-hand man. And the complexity of how you have two characters who start off being just very obviously good guy characters, and how they split off into these different roads, is one of my favorite things about the show. What made one of them go bad and one of them not?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you ever really do find out, but
I don't know if you guys can hear my dog deciding he wants to cough and hack back there.
I heard the whoo.
I was about to say, middle of your talking, he decides he wants to hack. Hey, come here. Get back here where you're actually on camera. See?
Wait, who's saying why watch Babylon 5 when DS9 exists? You need better fans.
And Zenza fans. There you go. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. There you go.
Tell him to be better rounded. Watch more sci-fi.
Yes, watch more sci-fi. Hey, Babylon 5 is pretty decent. I am firmly in the DS9 camp.
Boo. Boo.
No, you cannot compete with the Cisco.
Boo.
Oh, come on now, man. Avery Brooks chews the scene up. So does Renee Aubergenois. They chew the scenery every time. And then don't forget, look.
You have two people. Babylon 5, the entire cast does it. Except
Babylon
the Asian
5
actresses.
does not have Golden Cott or Garrett.
Except for some flippin' reason, JMS had a thing for really terrible Asian actresses. Luckily, they were only around for like 2 episodes and then they left.
No Garrick, no Gul Dukat, no O'Brien's overt racism towards Cardassians. I mean, DS9 was like, hey, look, Babylon 5's got this really great idea over there. Let's do it with more money and better actors.
I disagree. Andreas Kasoulas.
Now, I'll give it.
Andreas Kasoulas is the greatest fucking Shakespearean actor to ever be on television.
Okay, I'm not saying that Babylon 5 doesn't have any good actors, and I did enjoy Babylon 5. And here's the thing, Babylon 5 never had a really, really idiotic episode about some stupid aliens coming over with a game. But, I mean, DS9 is great. I'll give you this.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying that, like, saying you don't have to watch Babylon 5 because DS9. Oh, yeah, there you go. DS9 does not have Ivanova.
Oh, of course not. I'll put it this way. I will watch Babylon 5 over Next Generation. Every time.
They're different. I think they're different enough things that, though I will say, Claudia Christian being in that show did result in the picture of her with her head on Patricia Tallman's boobs. So this was like, I think that was the most watched part of my whole Crusade thing, was when I popped that picture up. Everyone was like, can you just pause right there?
This is someone else's boobs. Okay. So before
now I have to see if I can find it. This will convince your entire audience to watch.
I don't know. I mean, DS9 has Jadzia Dax kissing another woman.
Boobs.
You just
Boobs
said
win.
boobs.
Boobs win every time. This isn't even the woman she like has a
I
thing
like
for in
DS9.
the. Can I share screen?
Sure.
I
Well, I
I
think you
literally
can.
don't know. I didn't know if I could because sometimes it's not.
If you can't, you can somehow load it up so that I can put it up here.
Share. There we go. I think you have to put it up though.
We can put it up there.
There you go. That's not even the woman she like ends up with in the show. Yeah, so there apparently also is a scene where she was supposed to have a dream that she came on to CNC naked. And Claudia Christian was a lingerie model before she went on the show. And they couldn't get the shot right because the body stocking kept rolling up and getting into the shot and everything else. So finally she just whipped it off. And so all of the shocked faces that you see in that are actual reactions because she just paraded into the shot with nothing on. She was like in her underwear or something. That was it.
And you got stuff available. I mean, you got all this stuff. All this stuff set aside. You got all these pictures and everything. I mean, I'm just not. I'm not going to be mean and pull up a picture of Jadzia Dax in a swimsuit and when she went to Ryza and put that up to combat your boobs picture.
I'm just saying, like, both shows have things that work well for them.
That's right, folks. We're here talking about game design, and we have moved on to cheesecake.
No. We are discussing the fact that all of the people should be more well-rounded and watch both shows.
That's right. You should be more well-rounded, and you should watch both the chick whose head is put on another chick's boobs, and you should watch Jadzia Dax in a swimsuit.
There you go. See?
That's what we've come to, folks. That is where we have landed on this program. But
hey, sometimes you have to go for the basest motivations in order to get people to understand what they need to do the right thing.
That's true. That is very true. So let's bring that around here. Where is that? What is that point? When you say we've talked a lot about as the first part being polymathic. What is the advantage of that polymathic reading? And I'm not even talking about just let's use fantasy as an example because everybody here has played D&D. Everybody here understands D&D. Everybody here understands the fantasy gaming aspect. So where does things like reading about real world religion, reading history, reading the classics, where do these things play into making your fantasy game better and making it something that sells better and it's more successful as a game itself?
Well, I mean, pardon the person who feels the need to rev his truck out my window. You know, you were talking about Game of Thrones as a what did you call it?
I called it a
fanfic of the War of the Roses.
A War of the Roses fanfic, and that's actually probably the nicest thing I've ever said about anything George R.R. Martin wrote.
Well, but the fact is, whether you like it or not, the book is famous, and the man is like a multimillionaire. Without knowledge of the War of the Roses, without that historical background, that book never would have existed. And again, 95% of people aren't going to have a clue. There are a lot of people that hear the War of the Roses thing and go, well, okay, it's a historical thing, but they don't go look it up. Frank Miller, when he did 300, said he really hoped that if he made it crazy enough, people would go look up the war it was based on. Most people didn't. But man, you know, based on a true story gets a whole lot of butts in seats or, you know, books in hands.
Based very loosely, on a true story.
Yeah, exactly. God of Ka, thank you for coming. I followed you on Twitter because I didn't have you on my thing before. So,
Hey, Kai. See you, man. Thanks
um,
for coming out.
Tolkien doesn't get enough credit for the fact that a lot of what he did was based on studying not only language but myths from throughout Europe.
Yep.
And without that basis, we wouldn't have Middle Earth.
I would say that when it comes to Tolkien, which everybody else who's in any way involved in my channel understands the obsessive level that I go to for Tolkien. I'm a massive Tolkien guy, but a lot of people forget that the Hobbit was written because he wrote a story for his grandkids, fairy story for his grandkids. The
And then
Lord
he
of the
got a detail
Rings.
wrong.
Say what?
And then he got a detail wrong.
Yes, he did.
He got something wrong, and one of his grandkids said, "Well, last time you said this," and so he started writing it down so that he didn't get the details. He did
Correct.
not like being corrected by his grandchildren.
Well, and he didn't like inconsistency, which is
Yeah.
part of the reason why he got so unbelievably obsessive with the way he built things. But when he wrote Lord of the Rings, the goal was different. When he wrote Lord of the Rings, he looked back and he realized that British fantasy or British mythology no longer existed because you had British mythology that was passed down almost entirely oral, was almost entirely an oral tradition, and the Romans came in, and the Romans wiped out the majority of Britain. And then when Britain was just starting to come back, the Saxons came in. And before the Saxons could even really fully get established, the Danes came in. So British mythology, the British proto history, or as he would have called them, the British fairy stories, were all wiped out. First by the Romans, then by the Saxons, then by the Danes, then by the Normans. So he was setting out to set out a true mythic British prehistory. And he dug very deep into those things. He looked for what is the British origins of them to try and create a British prehistory. And that doesn't happen if you don't have a very, very deep understanding. Which, by the way, if you haven't read Tolkien's translation of Beowulf, you're missing out. But Beowulf, of the Norse mythology, of the Saxon mythology that a lot of people miss. Saxon mythology is also almost completely disappeared because it was overridden by Vikings and Normans. Of the British and the Celtic histories, those things, Middle Earth doesn't exist without those.
Well, and like you said earlier, it's the settings that get people into games. And they need, in order for a setting to be captivating, it needs to, one of the reasons I don't like current modern day D&D is it feels very flat. It feels very two-dimensional. It feels very like, here's a cardboard cutout. Now, move your pieces around the board. I want a game that has history, that has depth, that feels like it's possible. If this set of rules existed in this world, how would it actually work? If magic actually existed, how would that affect people's lives? How would people look at mages? I think out of all the older D&D stuff, I liked Dragonlance the best because they talked about the fact that magic was rare, that people were afraid of mages, that they had to hide out in towers because, they couldn't function kind of in the rest of society because people didn't want them. And then
Absolutely.
you've got Forgotten Realms, which is what 5e is based on, where you have immortal godlike beings who are favored of the actual gods and can cast endless spells eternally all the time with no consequence.
Absolutely. I 100,000% agree with that. I think I always say that I'm a Hickman Revolution guy.
In
everything
which
right.
sense?
Well, as close to everything as a human being can get. And Dragonlance is a great part of that. The part I always remember out of Dragonlance, and you touched on this, the part that I always remembered out of Dragonlance is he said they were talking about how did these great wizards have their towers overrun? Because if you remember in the Age of Mortals, after the Age of Dreams, everything's collapsed, the cataclysm has happened, the gods have quote unquote abandoned the world, which is another thing I like about how Tracy Hickman put things together. The gods didn't abandon the world, the people abandoned the gods by blaming the cataclysm on them. Oh, you left us. We were always here, you just didn't look for us.
Yeah.
Because you chose to decide that your actions weren't what happened. But
yeah, Kryn has so much history to it. It was
yeah. But look at the one line that I focus on though is they're talking about how did these mages with all this great power get overthrown by like the common rabble who rallied around their towers, right? And you remember Wayreth and Palanthus are the only towers that were there
because they get tired.
Yeah, it's like they still have. Doesn't matter how great an archmage you are, you still have to sleep. You still have to rememorize your spells.
You have to eat. Yep.
You
And
have
there
to
were only
eat.
and mages were rare, so there were only so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And being special, it's like, well, that's one of the things that made the original Star Wars great. Jedi were rare, Sith were rare. Han Solo was far more likely to be your hero than Luke was.
That's right.
And then everybody got upset because, Andor was made and didn't have Jedi in it. And, the Mandalorian had to pull Jedi in because people were, despite the fact that the Mandalorians were a special group in and of themselves.
Yeah.
There is a series I got for my birthday this year, and the system is not great. I will probably house rule the heck out of the system, but the world is fascinating. It's an alternate post World War II. And so it's relatable. Like my grandfather was in World War II. Like there are chunks of this that feel very real to me. The game doesn't take place during World War II, but there's history in the world that I can relate to. It doesn't feel flat. It feels mysterious. Because in this version, World War II was fought between mages and non-mages. And instead of there being nuclear bombs dropped, there was like basically a magical bomb, and no one remembers exactly what happened. The war was just suddenly over. And so you have this entire mystery behind like what exactly happened. And everyone worldwide has very fuzzy memories about what happened to the war. And it's all done in pulp noir style. Like literally you can visualize the characters in black and white.
Which is awesome because pulp noir is fantastic. It's just an example of how limited storytelling tools leads to better storytelling.
And it didn't do well. I think the marketing wasn't great. So there were like 4 books that got turned out and then it went out of print. But it's a great game. Well, it's a great world. The system does need tweaking.
Answer a question.
But despite the fact, series is called The Edge of Midnight. There's The Edge of Midnight, the core book. There's The Edge of Midnight, The Naked City, and then there are 2 like supplements. One is on mages and one is on a race called Gaunts. Gaunts are one of the reasons they went to war with mages is that when mages used their magic, they basically sucked the life force out of someone else, but that person didn't die. They became a Gaunt. So they absorb the life force automatically from everything around them. So they are now the second class citizens Nobody wants to be around them because if you spend too much time around them, you'll die. And so the more mages use their magic, the more gaunts there were. So now you have these kind of opposing viewpoints with humans in the middle.
Which is actually kind of funny. Have you ever read the Enchanted Forest Chronicles?
I have not.
All right, it's by Patricia C. Reed, and it is essentially a mockery of all fairy stories, all fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's turned on its head. The entire main character of the entire 4-book series, the primary focus character, is a princess who becomes a dragon princess. So obviously she's been captured by a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is that dragons don't eat princesses, and they really don't eat knights or anybody else either because they taste bad. They need princesses because they need somebody to organize treasure, to help.
They need a secretary.
We need help with chores, to manage things, that sort of thing. The dragons are actually pretty cordial. And she becomes a dragon. It's kind of funny because she has like a sign out in front of the cave that's like, all knights, heroes, and questers, please go away. I don't need any rescuing. I'm here because I want to be. It basically turns every fantasy trope on its head.
Mm-hmm.
So wizards are very, very bad people. Wizards are bad guys. And the big thing about wizards is they steal magic from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of the series, I think it's in the second book, they talk about the king of the enchanted forest, and he can visually see magic in the world. And it's a bunch of threads that run everywhere. And he hates wizards because anytime a wizard comes around, there's big knots in the threads. Like they get tangled up like Christmas lights. Because what wizards have is their staff sucks up magic. So anytime they cast a spell and they suddenly leave, all these threads of magic that are going into the staff become a big knot.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're thieves. They walk around with their staff, and their staff steals everybody else's magic that they turn around and use. And it's a very, very unique way to turn around and look at magic, at fairy stories, at creatures. All the evil creatures are good. All the bad creatures are, all the evil creatures are good. All the good creatures are evil. And it gives you a very unique view of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing that I look at where it's like reading something like that gives you a new way to envision a system in your game.
Did you ever read The Legend of Nightfall?
I haven't read that one.
Kind of an idea, except darker even. It's a world where like 1 in 1,000 people is born with a gift, and those gifts are usually really tiny things. But sometimes you get major ones like the ability to read minds, or the ability to make people happy, or sometimes they're just things like, the ability to sing really well. And then 1 in 1,000 of those 1,000 are mages. And mages do not have gifts, but they can take gifts from others by torturing them to death.
Ooh, that definitely is darker.
And it's, again, there's a whole lot of like social, because mages are incredibly powerful, and so they tend to be like king's advisors and things like that. People don't trust them, but they also don't trust the people with the gifts, just because there's always a chance that it might be something major.
And that's like Thieves' World Dark, though. Basically torture you to take your gift away.
Yeah. And basically what they do is they don't like just torture them to death. They torture them and take their souls, and they force their souls to activate that particular gift at any point. So you can get a mage that has like 100 souls bound to them. And he basically tortures the soul in order to make the soul spill up the gift whenever he wants it. Yeah, it's very dark.
It's kind of like the idea of, I can torture an NFL wide receiver and get his raw speed. I can torture an NFL running back and take his ability to cut and turn. I can torture an NFL quarterback and get his field vision and his ability to read a defense. And I can make myself the magical, perfect football player by essentially torturing the Pro Bowl team for the the AFL Pro Bowl team, or the AFC Pro Bowl team, and taking all their abilities.
Well, but it's worse than that, because even after they're dead and you've taken their abilities, you continue torturing them in order to use their abilities.
Hmm.
So they are bound to you for like until you die. And what normally happens is a stronger mage kills that mage and adds their souls to their collection.
Huh. So
So
a
you
bigger
could,
mage kills you and takes all your people.
yeah. So theoretically, for the rest of eternity, you're just passed from mage to mage, getting tortured whenever they want your ability.
So you're like a human spell book.
Kind of, yeah.
No.
Or you're a single spell in the spell book.
And if you want that to be in your game, you would have had to have read that particular series to get that
Yep.
idea, or read something it got its idea.
It's actually a single book. So.
Yeah. Or you would have had to read whatever he took that idea from.
Yep.
And that's really what it comes down to here is I go back to the way Alexander McCree said it. You have to read broadly to be polymathic. You need to understand why Ahab did what he did, why he said what he said, why the situation rose the way it did, why we always call him Ishmael because he tells us to call him Ishmael, even though that's not who he is. We understand his view. We understand what happened in history, why Napoleon failed, what led to Waterloo, what led to the disaster of invading Russia, and also what led to Napoleon being better than everybody else. We understand these things.
Yep.
And we put them back into what we write and what we put these things back into our games. And we can only do that if we've actually experienced these things. We can only see why as a buyer, you can only recognize what makes something unique by being able to follow those threads back. Because just trying to make something up that makes no sense, guess what? Your reader's probably going to look at it. Makes no sense.
I would also push back a little bit on your fanfic of War of the Roses, because fanfic of War of the Roses would just be the events. It takes a real understanding of how it affected people and how things led to those events to write a decent story that feels fleshed out. And not necessarily, George Martin, if that's not your cup of tea, but reading about, watching Vikings, which really has nothing to do with Vikings or Viking history or anything else. It's a sheerly fictionalized leather jacket biker version of Vikings.
True.
If you want a world that actually feels like Viking legends and Viking histories, you really have to understand why they did things they did, how their legends affected and their belief in gods affected their culture. And without that kind of deeper understanding, your world is never going to really feel full.
And it's fair. And to point out, you mentioned Vikings, for instance. Ragnar Lothbrok in the Vikings History Channel series is a collection of about 6 different Viking legends, including his sons, who we know for a fact existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost ironic in a way that his sons are mentioned in the series, but his actual character is an amalgamation of those sons and the legends of the father, plus a bunch of other legendary Vikings. But you're absolutely right. You have to have that deeper understanding and that more well-read understanding of that culture, of that history that you're emulating. And the same thing goes forward into games. If you're going to try to emulate something, you have to pay attention to it. In my own design work right now, there's two things I'm working on that are tied to my 3612 system, because I broke one of my own keys before I even knew it was a key. And that is that I started designing the system before I started designing the actual games. And that hurts because the system has to be informed by what you're doing. But I have the Dreamless Dark, which is a Hyborian mystical world, very pulp sword and sorcery setting. And I have Cyber City Dodge, which is a cyberpunk, sort of cyberpunk Western setting. It's cyberpunk, but instead of us doing cyberpunk in the big city where everybody is migrated to, where 99% of all cyberpunk stories take place, it's in the Forgotten Land in the flyover states in the middle of Kansas. What happened to these people? Well, let's take Cyberpunk the game, for example. While everybody is migrating to places like Night City, what's happening out here in the middle of Nebraska? And I've chosen to do it as a motorcycle club based setting, a very biker gang type setting. You know what that's led to? A whole lot of reading and a whole lot of watching and a whole lot of consuming of things like, Demon's Row or Gangland or interviews with Sonny Barger or research into Taco Bowman from the Outlaws, right? Because if I don't understand motorcycle club, how the hell am I going to write a motorcycle club gang?
I have a funny story for you.
Go for it.
When I was in college, my best friend was a blind guy. And he became my best friend because at the time I suffered from migraines terribly. And he was the only person who was perfectly happy to just sit and have a conversation with me in the dark without it being weird. And then once we'd known each other for a while, he started telling me about his upbringing. And his upbringing was unique. And then he got around to explaining to me why his childhood was unique. And his childhood was unique because his father was Skip Workman. And then I got to meet Skip. And
that's there's a perspective.
For anyone who does not know, Skip Workman helped Sonny Barger start the Hells Angels.
Yeah, he ain't been around in a while, but he's one of the original HAs back in California.
Yeah, my understanding is that when he died, they canceled all police vacations, like statewide. And my friend's reaction was, like, there are a lot of old guys in their 70s and 80s. What do they think they're going to do?
What's hilarious is this actually kind of wraps itself back around to the same topic we've been talking about, the same key to effective TTRPG design and understanding, being well read. If you're an officer, like if I'm a police captain, I'm not canceling anybody's vacation. Why? Because if I understand biker culture, if I understand motorcycle club culture, the Hells Angels aren't doing shit on that day. Every Hells Angel for like 6 states is going to be in California, riding in double lines down the interstate behind a hearse, burying somebody. They're not going to be messing with anybody. They're not going to be dealing drugs. They're not going to be causing problems. They're not going to be partying. They're not going to be doing anything. Because if I understand that culture, I understand that when something like that happens, the whole nation stops doing what they're doing because one of the big guys died.
Possibly. Skip himself used to say that there was a difference between the original Hells Angels and the new guys. He said the new guys just aren't quite the same.
There is to a certain extent, for sure. I mean, there's
But
definitely,
but
yeah.
none of the young guys would have had enough respect to drive all the way for his funeral anyway.
Hmm. True.
You know,
And they're going to party.
none of the ones that didn't, you know, didn't follow that tradition.
And they're going to party like crazy. There's no doubt about it. And, there's going to be some stuff there, but you don't have to worry about, biker wars.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how it is. I mean, now they have a lot of, there's a lot of rules there. And Mac actually, he brought that up. It's like, yeah, they'd be partying after the burial. Yeah, they sure as hell would. And you're right. There have been a lot of old school, even Sonny Barger himself has kind of brought up that a lot of the newer chapters, a lot of the newer members don't have what they, because motorcycle club culture was brought in out of the Vietnam veterans coming in, and even earlier the World War II veterans and the Korea veterans coming back from war and not having a place. You don't really have that with the newer crop coming in. And you do have some, different MCs out there, like the Breed up in the Northeast, that essentially was the mafia on wheels. Their president, their national president, didn't, hardly ever rode his motorcycle.
Yeah.
He just wanted to be Sopranos on motorcycles.
Yeah.
But still, throughout that entire culture, and permeated throughout that culture, you would have looked at it and said, this is going to be a big bike rally. I mean, really the honest thing we need here is we need to make sure that everybody, we might need a couple extra cops on the street to watch for some things, but really what we need to be excited about is the massive amount of additional money we're about to make from all the bars that are going to be shut down all the way till past last call by all these bikers being here celebrating this guy's life. All the liquor stores that are going to be bought out by HAs rolling in and buying the entire store.
I mean, to be fair, Skip, when he was younger, did punch a lot of cops. So
yes, he did. He did.
But you were talking about building the system first. I tend to see what happens when people build system first is they never build a world. They're the games that say, "Oh, well, this is just the system. You just attach it to whatever world you want." And to me, that's really half a game.
Yep.
And I have never yet seen okay, I mean, even GURPS, which is designed to basically be able to run everything. You can't run everything all at the same time. You have to have the core book, and then you have to have whatever it is that you're planning on running. So unless this person who was already, not willing to take the time to develop a world is willing to take the time to develop like 6 supplements that are based on genres, just saying, well, here's a framework, attach whatever you want to it, I just don't see it working very well in most cases. I mean, first of all, the world is what hooks most people, and it's definitely what hooks most players. I have never gone to a player group and said, "Hey, I'm going to run such and such a game." I go to them and say, "Hey, I'm going to run a game where you're going to be doing this thing." Like that's what catches their interest,
You're
especially if it's a
absolutely
new,
right.
especially if
Nobody
it's a
buys GURPS.
new game. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, talked over you a little bit there. I'm sorry. You're
Right.
absolutely right. Nobody buys GURPS. They buy vampire. They buy werewolf. You're absolutely right. Nobody buys Palladium. They buy Alien. They buy Ninja Turtles. They buy.
I don't think that's true. Palladium and GURPS actually both do very, very well.
They
but,
do okay, but they do. The people who buy them through the games that they get introduced by.
Well, what I was going to say is that people buy GURPS and then they buy GURPS Egypt, or they buy GURPS and then they buy GURPS Illuminati. They buy GURPS and then they buy GURPS Cyberpunk.
I think you got that backwards. They buy GURPS Cyberpunk and then they buy GURPS because they have to have GURPS to play it. And then they start buying the other GURPS systems.
Well, you have to understand that most of the people I know that played GURPS started GURPS when it was like first came out, and then people did actually. It was a fad. Like it was one of the first real competitors to D&D, and people did actually buy GURPS first, and then they decided what it was they wanted to play with it.
And that's fair, but let's look at the logic behind that. GURPS was honestly the first generic role playing system. It was
And it was
new in the fact that it was generic.
and it was more than just a framework of like here's a basic outline, hook your own stuff to it.
Yeah,
Like
it was a little bit
it was
more than
never
that.
just that. I mean, look at Fate. Let's see, how many people are in your chat right now?
Not very many, like 7.
Well, that's fine. 7 people in your chat. Who here has read and played Fate? Like read all the way through and played a game of Fate?
There you go, folks. Throw an X in chat if you have read through and played Fate.
If it's
Mac
more
knows
than
Fate.
one, I will be really impressed.
There you go. Steal from the best. If not available, steal from Homer. And even Mac Thompson agrees that he has never read the entirety of Fate. Shellback Bo goes in and tells you that he bought Hero System and then all the supplements.
Well, because I mean, I think it's kind of ingrained. Like most of us, like we're just kind of trained to buy the core book first. You buy the core book, you find out if you like it, and then you buy, the stuff you want to go with it.
That's kind of on the fair. That's definitely fair. And to out myself, my philosophy was kind of a GURPS philosophy when I developed my system. I looked at it and I'm like, I want something. My core book, which is half written, but my core book starts off with, hey, this is what and this is my business model, just so that everybody knows what I'm looking at. My original idea was that my core book would come with 2 settings. And it was, here's the core rules, and you're supposed to make your own system with this. You're supposed to attach your own stuff. Here's how you develop callings. Here's how you develop origins. Here's how the stats work. Here's how you develop weapon systems, et cetera, et cetera. Here's how you build a magic system. By the way,
see, that's fine. But that's also very different.
Yeah, and at the end, I was also, by the way, it also comes with the Dreamless Dark and Cyber City Dodge, a cyberpunk and a fantasy setting or sword and sorcery setting that give you examples of how to use the core rules to make a setting. Now, of course, that has led to me being totally swamped and bogged down because I'm now essentially making 3 games. But
right, but that's what I'm saying is GURPS went into it figuring, yes, we're going to have a core, and then we're going to pre-make the things you hang on that core. What I'm talking about is people that say, here's a core, I don't plan on doing any more work.
Yeah, you do have a lot of that, and that is terrible.
That is, I want to design a system only. I don't want to put in the work to do anything else. And I don't feel like those do well, and I also don't feel like they run well. I think that taking a system and insisting that you can run every possible genre and world, that's one of the things that 5e has done so badly.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it advertises itself as, well, here's a game that anyone can play. You just have to tweak how you play it. But it's never going to be a good horror setting. You can't have a good horror. No. You can't have a good horror setting when you aren't really all that worried about dying.
That's true.
When there is a lot that's unknown.
You have to change so much to make it work for that. You may as well just play
D&D. Yeah, might as well play something that's actually a horror game. Play Shadow of the Demon Lord. Like play Cult. Play Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Call of Cthulhu, I think, Call of Cthulhu is very specialized horror. I think, like, if you got somebody that wants more,
it's horror investigation.
Well, and it's set in a specific time period, and I mean, people who are looking at D&D want a fantasy horror, and Shadow of the Demon Lord does fantasy horror great.
That's true.
Basically,
You can do Cthulhu by Gaslight, Cthulhu Modern, Call of Cthulhu. I forgot what the Roman setting is.
but they're all real. They're all semi-real world. Shadow of the Demon Lord. Shadow of the Demon Lord is basically a post-apocalyptic D&D.
Very true. Very, very true. Even going to Delta Green, you're not going to get the same feeling you would from a true fantasy horror setting.
Yeah. But I mean, yes, I think people need to read more, and they need to read things that like are outside your comfort zone. Things that you don't think you're gonna like, because man, you find some stuff that you can pick up. There's a book I read. I mean, I love horror, but there was a book. I think it's just called Mirror. I still have a copy somewhere. I get goosebumps every time I read this book. It is so creepy that even though I've read it multiple times, it still makes me uncomfortable. I keep it and I keep reading it because when I need a little extra like boost to run a horror game and get that atmosphere going, it's excellent for it. But I still feel really uncomfortable every time I read it.
Hey, and that's exactly what you want. And going outside of the scope here, I think that's the kind of the hallmark of a good book. A good book is the one that gives you the feelings that it's supposed to impart every time you read it.
Shell, I have already stated that I think everyone should read terrible stuff once in a while and break down why it's terrible, so that you know what not to do. And
there you go.
Smut is not just bad because it's smut. It's bad because it's badly written. And it is the perfect example of reading something. And if you can analyze why it's terrible, you will be a better writer for it.
There you go. The eclectic goat reading recommendation for the evening is to go out and buy the entire Sarah J. Maas catalog.
Oh, God, no.
If it's a blank of blank and blank, you need to read it.
No.
That's actually my red flag for books not to buy. If the title is a blank of blank and blank, nope.
And I'm not saying people should read them frequently. What was the one I read? God, she was one of the like first monster romance things. And the first couple were actually like real stories. And by like the fourth or fifth one, you could open the book to any random page and it would be just really implausible sex with monsters.
You talking about Anne Rice?
No, I don't think I've read that much Anne Rice either, though. Crap, you're gonna make me look this up now.
Hey, Mac wants to know what the terribly scary book was, so you need to tell him.
I think it was just called Mirror, but I would have to check. I will check when we're done. I will leave it in the comments.
There you go.
That'll give everybody
be in the comments when this is a video. So you need to come back and see it again.
I was going to say this will give everybody an excuse to come back.
There you go. See, this is why I like this girl. She's like, this is a reason why you need to come give me another view.
Hey, it's people are donating to you, and I will always like be happy that people are making donations to.
Absolutely. Which, by the way, you have not given me in the private chat your Ko-Fi or whatever yet, so I need to.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to. Give me just a second.
You are, because here's the thing.
Hang on a second.
I may not have the world's largest live following, but I do have a pretty generous one when it comes to taking care of people. So, yeah, we definitely need to make sure that they know where they can go and help you with your various situations. Because honestly, if I can do a little bit of good with this channel, that's really what it's here for. That's why I want to give away stuff for a car. It's not just because I do love working on cars and I do love doing that, but it's also because at the end of the day, if I can give back, that makes the whole thing worthwhile. So,
okay, the terrible series is the Anita Blake series
the Anita Blake series.
by Laura Hamilton.
By the way, guys, there it is, the ko-fi.com link for the Eclectic Goat there. Go throw her a couple of bucks if you can. Throw her what you can spare, because we want her to keep editing games.
Or, come like check out my channel and see if you actually like it, and then throw me a couple bucks.
That's right. She's got.
I will say that we are talking TV for the next 5 weeks, and then we will get back into talking about. I do Slice and Dice. Slice and Dice is my gaming show. I do it in seasons because in the summertime, all of the people I want as guests are at conventions, and so everyone's schedule is terrible. So I just have a couple of months where I do like television stuff, and then we get back into talking about games again. So my first episode of Slice and Dice season 3 this coming up, I think it's sometime in July, is going to be the Critical Role Effect, and Professor DM is going to be on again.
Oh, there you go. I need to reach out to him, make sure he gets. But yes,
you skipped horribly on that one.
Oh, ouch. I just said I need to make sure he gets on this series about game design, because Professor DM has a tremendous amount of knowledge that I don't think a lot of people understand. I think a lot of the OSR guys look at him as a new D&D D-tuber, dungeon tuber, and a lot of the new people are just like, oh, he knows about games.
He's lot of people forget for ages. He's actually one of the older.
Dude wrote for Dungeon Magazine in the 80s.
Tom Kane did that too.
Yeah, so he's been around for a while, and I think Deathbringer is going to be a good game.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that turns out. That is, I really wanted to go to Page in January, and in large part it was because I wanted to be able to pick up a copy and have him sign it.
There you go.
And then the guy running it turned out to be a real dink, and I was like, yeah, I'm not supporting that.
It turned out to be a what?
A dink. An asshole.
All right. Yeah. Okay. There you go. You need OSR purist singing as a D&D apologist. I love the term OSR purist. It's like, how can you be an OSR purist? OSR is essentially the movement of AD&D homebrew.
Well, the other thing is that I'm always weirded out by companies that call themselves OSR. So Dungeon Crawl Classics, and this is not to throw shade on Dungeon Crawl Classics. They're a good game in their own way, but they were created as a spin-off of Dungeons and Dragons 3, 3rd edition and 3.5.
Yeah.
They came out because people were upset that they got away from 3rd edition and went to 4th edition. OSR specifically, but if you look up the definition, OSR was started during 3rd edition by people who were upset with Wizards of the Coast period and wanted to go back to TSR roots. So Castles and Crusades has a much better holding on the title of the original OSR than because Dungeon Crawl Classics fed into the very thing that OSR was trying to get away from.
That's fair. And let's face it, Castles and Crusades is functionally Gary Gygax's 2nd edition.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's very
don't ever put that statement on Twitter. You will be run out of town.
That's okay. You have any idea how many times I've been run out of town? And I'm still in town. They keep trying.
I have been shocked. I have been shocked at people's inability to just. It's like a religion. Like, here is one area in the book where we disagree, and therefore we must now have a war.
It's pretty hilarious. So let's not.
I am so glad I don't play D&D anymore. I
So
was asked, is it the most terrifying book I've ever read? If not, what is?
I was about to bring that up because I was going to say we're like 15 minutes over right now, so let's knock out some chat stuff and let
Mirror.
what's going on. And here you go. Here's the question from Mac.
I don't know. It is the most disturbing. Well, it's at least one of the most disturbing books I've ever read. Most disturbing horror books I've ever read. Is it the scariest? I don't. It's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Like, if I can feel like something could be real, it's going to affect me a lot more. And Mirror is so crazy that I don't think I really consider it scary. I mean, it's never given me nightmares or anything. What is the most terrifying book I've ever read? I don't know. I'd really have to think about that.
That's a tough one.
There's kind of one like tickling in the back of my brain that I can't. Whatever it is, I think it may be something that I only read once and then like wouldn't ever read again.
I don't know. 1984 keeps becoming more and more the most terrifying book I've ever read, predominantly because every government on this planet seems to think it's an instruction manual.
Well, what I was gonna say is, so I spent years before I went into but before I developed medical issues and had to change careers. I worked in the mental health field,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked a lot with people who, how do I put this gently? I worked with the people who were spending their life in prison, not because, I killed you because you slept with my wife. I killed you because God told me to.
Or your hair was red and the alien said that red hair would dominate the planet.
Well, I never had one of those, but I mean, at one point, at one point in time, we had 18 clients, and 16 of them were there for having killed women. So my job was real interesting. In several cases, they were there for having killed multiple women. So, but because of that, I did a lot. Most of my education really was not terribly well. It most therapist counselor education is on how to deal with the walking well who are having marital issues or midlife crises or whatever. There's not a lot on how to deal with people who are really that severely ill. So I had to read a lot of actual true books, and they were terrifying just because they were real. Making Monsters was horrifying. It's actually about a series of counselors who destroyed their clients' lives by hypnotizing them and convincing them, like, of really bad things. I mean, you can chuckle, but the book is really awful.
I'll bet it is. I'll bet it's
It's it.
terrible. I'm chuckling at how far you have to reach in order to sanitize it so that you don't say it's some really, really fucked up shit that is going to corrupt your brain and is going to make you question why you decided to do anything and is going to send you back to church.
I looked at it as a warning. I really thought every single person who ever wanted to be a counselor should read it because it was an excellent lesson on how much damage you can do when you are convinced you're right.
Ooh. And there's a lesson that everybody needs.
And that only you can save this person because you know what's wrong with them and no one else does.
I would think for a counselor that would be extraordinarily important.
And yet it's not something that is ever gone over.
That doesn't surprise me for some reason.
The Lucifer Effect was terrifying. The Anatomy of Evil was terrifying.
All of
Um,
which, by the way, are great books for you to read if you're going to design a TTRPG, because every last one of them, I guarantee you, will give you a different perspective on how people think, on how mentally ill people think, on how
actually,
people.
actually, the Making Monsters one is about how the therapists who Harley Quinn. There are
Mhm,
lots of people that kind of laugh about, like, well, like a psychiatrist, whatever. No, if you read Making Monsters, Harley Quinn becomes a completely believable villain.
mhm. Well, that's what I was just about to say, and how your therapists and whatnot can do the same thing. Can not only create monsters, but my mother was a was career very high level RN, very high level in the medical field. And she used to tell me all the time, she's like, the craziest people you will ever meet in your life are like psychotherapists. Because when you're talking about psychologists and psychiatrists, they spend their entire day talking to people who are off their rocker out of reality. And slowly but surely, subtly, that kind of corrupts their brain
Yep.
into these weird nonsenses.
Um, the Lucifer effect is about how good people turn evil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Anatomy of Evil is about how all of the things we label as evil actually exist in nature. And I always thought it would be excellent for designing monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Because you really don't have to if you want a truly unique monster that doesn't exist in any other game, all you have to do is look at nature, because there is some weird shit that goes on in nature, uh, and just slap some stats on that sucker.
Yeah.
Um, Chickens. Chickens have some completely insane behaviors. Rabbits.
Mhm.
Everyone think rabbits are cute and fuzzy? I Every scar I have from farm work came from a rabbit.
They're assholes. They will like duck their head and charge you like a bull.
Um, they also will, like, kill their young, and
Mhm.
you know all these things that we would think of as evil and would make excellent monsters. They exist in nature. And
Mhm.
you can find stuff you never thought of. Like, you would categorize it as evil if you thought about it, um, but we don't think about it because it just, it exists in, like, the insect world or the rodent world or something like that. Um, but it's a great way to design monsters.
Yeah, and
Um,
not to pull off into moralizing here. That's actually a very Christian theology there. When you look at the way a lot of early Christian theologians looked at things, a big part of it is a lot of what we call evil, a lot of what is morally wrong in our view is pure impulse. It is natural. It's like, hey, this will make my life easier. This is something I can do that will feel good in this moment. This is something that I want to do right now. A lot of the quote unquote evil comes from a lack of control and a lack of thinking beyond this second. And if we look at it in a game perspective, you look at the original alignments and we didn't have evil to start with. We had chaotic.
mhm.
And what is chaotic? Chaotic is thinking in the moment. Chaotic is a lack of thought for the future. Chaotic is a lack of understanding consequences. It is about what is immediately right now going to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And while that got fleshed out later in alignment into chaotic good, which is I want to do the most good for somebody right now in this particular instance, and chaotic evil, I want to do the most for myself in this particular instance. It started at chaotic as the quote unquote bad alignment, because I don't think ahead. I don't think about externalities. I don't think about how it affects others. I only act on this instinct, and like you said, goes right back to those animals, insects, these instinctive I'm just going to kill these young because they're inconvenient at this time, and survival of the species is what matters. So screw these young. We'll kill them. We'll make more young later.
Goats, because obviously.
Goat.
During breeding season, female goats that are close to each other will begin attacking other pregnant female goats that are similar on the pecking order. Because when a goat is born, they automatically default to whatever the position in the pecking order their mother holds at the time of their birth. So if a female goat can up her status even one level, even if she drops back down immediately, her young keep that default status. So to us, it looks terrible that they're punching each other in the stomach and trying to make each other miscarry. The other thing is that if you don't give birth or if you miscarry, you automatically lose status. So it looks terrible to us, but to them, what they're saying basically, if they could, talk like people, is I want a better life for my kids.
Yeah. Which is,
and I am willing to murder that bitch in order to get it.
There you go. And that is absolutely. And here's the thing. Let's wrap it back. We're going to go through the last of the chat here in a second because we are 25 minutes past over now. But let's go back to the original topic here about being well read, about understanding things beyond and outside your genre. If you want to be able to be an effective TTRPG designer, here's your example. Somebody who has read some zoological texts, who's understood some animal husbandry, that sort of thing, picks up these things, puts them into their monsters. Now you have these terrifying monsters that are terrifying to our human sensibilities, to our evolved sense of an ability to have a moral compass. And all they are, and they seem real because they are real. As opposed to trying to say, well, what would a really evil person do? And let's turn it into a monster. It's let's just go find something that creatures incapable of moral calculation do that we would find abhorrent. So let's take the goat, for example, that's trying to force miscarriages. Now, all we have to do is add sentience. All we have to do is add the capacity for moral judgment. And we take a typical barnyard animal that we all love and some people do yoga with, and we turn them into an absolute nightmare of a monster. And you can't do that if you don't have an understanding outside of what you're looking for, which is why being well read, both in the polymathic sense and in the deep into your genre sense, understanding those tropes, understanding how that works, is so essential to being an effective game designer. So let's take a look at some of these chats here. Of course, we got the you mean OSR purists, seeing him as a D&D apologist, talking about Professor DM. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And not just OSR purists. You've got a lot of old heads who, and not even old heads, a lot of people on the other side of the fence. A lot of the, I picked up 5e when Critical Role or Stranger Things started, or in 2020 started, COVID group. They don't understand just how far back Professor DM goes into this hobby. He's just another famous dungeon tuber who teaches them how to play good games and makes cool styrofoam, dungeon terrain. So from both sides, he kind of gets the shaft when it comes to understanding just how deep his knowledge is. And I have a feeling, I'm going to put my money on it right now, Deathbringer is going to be a fantastic game that gets hate from two different camps. OSR.
I think he's got enough of a following, though. I think it'll still do well.
Oh, he'll do fantastic. There's no doubt about that. I'm
I mean,
just saying that he's going to get hate from both sides.
especially since he was smart enough from a marketing perspective to stop covering a ton of D&D stuff a while ago and start
True.
turning towards indie stuff. So now at least he won't look like a hypocrite.
Very true. Very true. OSR is a set of principles, not a set of rules. I tend to follow the RPG pundits' view on this. OSR is best viewed as a set of design principles. That's the way I see it. OSR is the idea of designing a game that is based around the same principles as AD&D or Basic. That's how I see OSR. It's more of a feeling, and it's more of a core than it is anything unique or spectacular. Goat, you got anything on that one?
Considering that people can't even seem to agree on a definition for OSR, there are people that would insist it is rules, the raw enthusiasts. And there are people that would just say that it is a set of principles in that, high death, high reward, don't, fluff your, I don't know. I don't think people can agree. Personally, I play the games that I like to play, and some of them are light and fluffy, and some of them are you're gonna die in 10 minutes. So I don't know. I don't worry too much about that. If you can't even get a definition for the term, then I'm not gonna worry too much about whether or not somebody disagrees with me on a single line or principle or anything else. So
Fair. And I default to the pundit's definition of it being a design philosophy because, as far as I've seen, that's the only concrete definition. Every other definition I've seen has been based on my feels. It feels like original D&D. It feels old school. It doesn't have whatever bullshit in it.
There is a technical definition, but nobody ever follows it. So, I mean, like I said, the technical definition was that it started when people were upset about Wizards of the Coast taking over completely. But now it's become, I mean, Shadowdark is considered OSR, and that's just like a grimmer version of 5e.
Yeah, and that's fair. And to be honest, I think a lot of people don't agree with the DAD system that Gorgon's Grimoire put out as OSR because it's basically a reprint, a restructured and better put together version of second edition. Though honestly, I would call that OSR. See here, scariest book I read was Malachi Martin's Hostage to the Devil. I have not read that. Have you?
I have not.
Looks like we are both going to
Don't read it. Don't read it alone at night. Nice.
It means I'm going to read it the same time I read everything else, alone at night. Well, I mean, to be fair, sometimes I read stuff with a cigar and a glass of whiskey out on the deck in the middle of the day, but I'm still alone.
That cover looks familiar, though.
What cover?
I looked it up on Amazon.
Oh, I was about to say I don't see a cover.
No, it looks really familiar to me. I'm adding it to my, when I'm not broke list.
Yeah, a couple of dozen other Exorcist stories. Exorcist stories are crazy. They can really get pretty deep into your head because they're very close to your head. They're very close to your psyche.
I think making monsters hits me in that same way, just because I happen to be more of a psych basis than a religious basis. It just happened to hit me more. But it's basically the same thing. I mean, it's basically that same things getting in your head.
That's right. That's right. And if you pay attention to Catholic theology, that's what demons do. Demons don't just magically turn you into some kind of crazy supernatural power evil being that just kills things for no reason. Demons prey on you for the things that you already want. They turn you to excess, and they prey on those natural human instincts and they dial them up to massive extremes, and those addictive personalities that make them worse. And when you start talking about exorcisms, it's here's somebody who went from one extreme to the absolute other automatically very quickly. They just immediately fell into that extreme. But let's be honest, a lot of these exorcism stories that happen, they start with a behavior that the only reason that it's, oh, we got to get a priest is because it's an innocent person, somebody who doesn't drink, turned into this raging alcoholic, while it ignores the demon that slowly turned that guy who socially drank into the guy who needed to drink every night, into a guy who drank before work, into a guy who drank during work, into a guy who is, if he's not drunk, he's a crazy, he's constantly trying to get to it. A lot of those exorcism stories, if you really look at them closely, it's somebody who went from stage 1 to stage 10 overnight as opposed to over 10 years. But there's a guy who went to stage 10 over 10 years who nobody remembers.
Did you know that the Catholic Church keeps panels of people that determine whether or not someone is deserving or needs an exorcism, and they are required to have psychiatrists on that panel to
Yes,
make
they
sure it's not
are.
mental health?
They sure are.
When I worked in the maximum security psych ward, our psychiatrist, in fact, had served on the Catholic Church's exorcism board.
That is correct. A lot of people don't understand just how much the Catholic Church has to do with modern science, including things like mental health, because they don't want to send, the Catholic Church does not want to send an exorcist to try to fix somebody who needs lithium.
Yep. Well, it's also dangerous.
Yeah. Very dangerous.
Dr. Fine was not religious in any way, shape, or form, but he said that for people who were truly religious and he didn't believe that medication would help them anyway, he always advocated for an exorcism because sometimes just the power of belief would really help them.
Imagine that. Sometimes just the power of faith gets the job done. Has anyone read Machiavelli's The Prince? I'm pretty sure that everybody here, I know for a fact that both Goat and I have read The Prince. I would be willing to bet that even if I go all the way back to the highest viewership that this stream has had, I'd almost be willing to bet that every single one of the people in this chat has read The Prince. And you should.
I do kind of want to give it a reread at some point, though. I think it's one of those books that, you pick up different things when you read it at different times in your life.
Absolutely. And it's a masterful work on human interaction.
I also feel the same way about Watership Down.
That's fair. That's fair.
You pick up very different things at different times in your life.
Going on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I would say if you have not read The Dictator's Handbook, that is another one that fits that bill where different parts of your life, you're going to get more out of The Dictator's Handbook. Have you read that?
I have not.
Oh, you need to. It's all about human social structures and power structures and how political structures work. If you want to understand why it is that somebody who has when Congress has a 15% approval rating, yet a 98% reelection rate, and you don't know why, Dictator's Handbook will tell you.
Oh, well, I know why, but it still does sound like something I want to read.
It's fantastic, by the way. Very, very fantastic. It is an excellent work on human power structures, all the way from like your HOA board all the way up to the president.
Yeah, I have a very hard time getting away from my my psychology past, despite the fact that it's probably terribly unhealthy for me.
That's why I'm actually a little bit shocked that you haven't read it. Because while it's not explicitly a psychiatry text, it is very, very well, it's very deeply steeped in the human psyche in the way we develop social and power structures. For you
It's
gamers, go ahead.
it's I haven't read it, but I am kind of vaguely familiar with it. It's more sociology, I think, than psychology.
True.
And you would be shocked at how much psychology systems frown on sociology being figured into the mix.
I wouldn't, mainly because there is a tremendous amount of sociology that is just garbage.
Well, actually, it's not that. It's that they think that you should look at every single person individually, which is true to a certain extent. What they forget is that groups affect how people act individually.
Very true.
Um,
Very true.
and I worked several places where they were notorious for, they called it treating as for what one needed, but I called it playing favorites. And so did all of the other clientele who were sitting there watching someone get what they considered to be favorable treatment. And they said, well, it's because it's what this person needs. And I said, but what you're doing is harming every other individual person because of the social dynamics. But they didn't want to hear about social dynamics. So
well, the honest thing about it is this all factors very heavily into what we've been talking about this entire time and what the topic is. This is why you need to read these kind of things. These kinds of things need to be read if you're going to be an effective TTRPG game designer, because the mechanics of how our brains work, the mechanics of how our societies work, the mechanics of how our minds work, all factor into what you need to be thinking about when you develop your game mechanics, because you are supposed to be simulating these things. And if you understand, if you understand that feeling, you can tell I need to adjust this mechanic one way or another because I need it to feel more like the real thing than to necessarily simulate it in a scientific manner.
I would also say it makes you a better game master. What about fiction? We've talked a lot about the importance of nonfiction, but I mean, what we're discussing is fiction is worlds of fiction.
Oh, I mean, fiction. I mean, as I stated at the very beginning, which I mean, wow, we're almost 45 minutes past.
Yeah, I am.
A lot of extra this time, but yeah, this is important because
I do suspect that my husband is probably wondering where the heck I am, but this has happened before, because when I am on shows, they do tend to run over for some reason.
Well, this is very good information. There's no doubt about it. And yeah, fiction matters because I started this with Macreese's comment that you need to read broadly to be polymathic, but you also need to be deeply, deeply steeped in your own genre, which automatically means you have to have a heavy fiction reading, heavy fiction reading diet, so to speak. But if you look at it, a lot of the fiction that really, really, really stands the test of time, you have things like The Lord of the Rings, which is the genesis of modern fantasy, but it's also very, very deeply based in both language, which is human thought. Let's be pure about that and be very explicit. Human thought and language go hand in hand. That's how we express ourselves. You know, Orwell will tell you all about how language is important to thought. But even there, let's just say Tolkien, he establishes modern fantasy. He's an establishment. When you start looking at the really big breakout fantasy changers, like the ones who really changed the genre throughout, it's all because of different things that come in. You look at, like, say, the Dragon Riders of Pern, which is deeply, deeply influenced by sci-fi. It is more a sci-fi series with fantasy trappings than a fantasy series with sci-fi trappings. And when you read into a lot of these different series, it's all about what did they bring in that was not fantasy that made them famous. And you can do the same thing with sci-fi. You can do the same thing with true crime, with cosmic horror. Every last one of them, you look at it and it's like, here's the guy who started it. Who's the next giant name that everybody knows? Well, wait a minute. That guy brought in elements from some other genre. It's still fantasy, but it's fantasy with sprinklings of sci-fi, sprinklings of cosmic horror, sprinklings of, modern detective novels, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things I like so much about The Edge of Midnight. For all intents and purposes, it's a post-war noir 1940s, and in a lot of ways, a mystery game. But then you have these sprinklings of, supernatural. I'm not even sure I would count it as fantasy, even though there's magic. It's more like it's supernatural horror. One of my other favorite games is a French game called Night. And every time someone asks me to describe it, I can't, because it's part post-apocalypse, it's part sci-fi, it's part Lovecraftian horror, it's part fantasy, Arthurian legend fantasy. Like it successfully combines so many different genres. I never would have believed it was possible. And depending on how much one way or another you want to go, you just set the game in different parts of the world, because different parts of the world are affected differently by the supernatural force that's kind of caused the apocalypse. So if you want a heavier cyberpunk feel, you go to the area of the world that is covered with the thing that just known as the machine. If you want more body horror, you go to Asia, which is affected by something called the flesh. And Numenera is fascinating because the basis of the game is that humanity has reached its technological peak 8 times and then destroyed itself 8 times. And you now live in the 9th world. So you are basically living at a D&D medieval tech society, sitting on the bones of super tech from 8 different destroyed civilizations. And so depending on how depending on how fantasy you want to make it versus how sci-fi you want to make it, you either set it in a small village where people believe that these are tools of the gods, or you can set it in a school where they study old technology. But you still are always with this low-tech society trying to figure out, like, how to not accidentally wipe ourselves out because somebody hit the wrong big red button.
All right, so let's move on a little bit here. First off, have you read Demonic Foes?
I think we covered that one already.
I don't know if you mentioned that one or not, but if you haven't,
I have not. It's on my list.
Awesome. All right, so let's knock a couple of things out. Yes, D&D Dad and Sons, I will be more than happy to come on and talk about alignment, because if anybody who has ever watched this channel, you know that alignment is like my big thing. And Mac is correct. The 9 alignment spectrum is infinitely superior. 3 alignment is only 3 alignments only work as a faction system. To be something that is a guide for role play and development of characters, you need the 9 spectrum.
Boo.
So that is but yes, I will very definitely will come on and talk about alignment with pretty much anybody. Let me look through here and see if I've got any others that need to.
Alignment is another one of those things that we have D&D so ingrained in our system that we assume that it's a necessity.
I don't think it's a necessity. Like, alignment is not in my game, despite the fact that I am an extreme alignment purist. I'm a very huge 9 alignment advocate. Here's my thing. I think the biggest problem with the 9 alignment system is that 90% of people don't understand it or how to use it properly. And there's an argument to be made that because 90% of the population cannot grasp it properly to use it well, means it's a bad mechanic on those grounds. I can actually accept that criticism of alignment because it has to be a 10,000 yard view. It has to be very broad spectrum, and it has to be treated as like the core of like the way your character's brain works. That is very, very conceptual, which means that most people just can't grasp that.
You realize that we're going to spend another 3 hours on this if we keep going, because I'm going to be
we'll
forced. I'm going to be forced to answer you.
We will have another stream on alignment. How about that? Because I have views on alignment. I have like hours of content on alignment specifically about how it should be used and what the best way to do it is. And the best argument, the purest argument against alignment, in my opinion, is to do it right requires such a higher minded view that the vast majority of players either can't or won't get it. And that is the best reason to leave it out of your game. That on a different stream. Let's scroll through these chats real quick and see if there's anything on the topic that we need to talk about. But D&D Dad and Sons, reach out to me. We'll set something up. Of course, we got a bunch of talk about alignment. Somebody mentioned the A word, which means the chat immediately turned to talking about it. Ooh, Burke and Payne debates. Conservatism versus classical liberalism. Yes, that is a very insightful book. Payne, anything by Payne is worth reading. Two Fathers of Fantasy, Tolkien and Howard. What do you think about that? I think C.S. Lewis has to enter the chat there.
I don't think so, because he very blatantly took his inspiration from Tolkien. I would say he's, I don't know, a grandson or something. I don't think Tolkien, people have taken to calling Tolkien the father of fantasy. He originally was labeled the father of high fantasy, which is also interesting because there's what we think of today as high fantasy is much higher than what he would have.
He's classically not high fantasy because Middle Earth is Earth. It's a mythical history.
Right, but when it came out, it was high fantasy compared to something like Howard.
That's fair, because I mean the definitions, the classical definition of high fantasy and low fantasy wasn't a thing until the 70s.
I mean, we have just made the definition of high fantasy so much more extreme than it was when he was writing, that his no longer feels very high, but it was at the time.
I go off of the classical definition where the terms were originated, which is low fantasy means it happens on Earth in fantastical reality. High fantasy means it's not our world, which is the very classic Cambridge definition of that's the first time it was used.
Except part of the definition always is that high fantasy includes non-human creatures.
Always Dragons. Does, but low fantasy does not have to only include humans.
I think the current definition says it does.
Like I said, I go off of the very classic definition. The first time high and low were used.
I have never found a definition that did not say elves did not equal high fantasy. But
no.
But
the
again,
classic
this is like,
definition
this
says
is like
that
the
high
OSR
fantasy
thing.
Always includes those. Low fantasy simply does not have. But the original definition was low fantasy is basically Earth but mythical. High fantasy is completely generated world. That was the original definition when the terms first came out, or the first time the terms were used, which was I want to say in like the late 60s, early 70s.
But I would push back on your thing that Middle Earth is Earth too. So, but anyway, that again could take us another 3
Tolkien
hours.
wouldn't, because he
So.
said it was a mythical prehistory for Britain.
That I mean,
And
he definitely was
when the
doing the
author
legends
says
and
this
stuff.
is our world, it's a mythical prehistory.
Yeah, but mythical prehistory. Like does not actually exist. That is what
True,
mythical
but
prehistory
Earth.
means.
But Earth. That's what makes it low fantasy. Which, by the same argument, Dragon Riders of Pern is also low fantasy, though it's also very heavily sci-fi influenced.
I would always categorize it as sci-fi.
Well, but here's the reason: because the entire history of Pern in Dragon Riders of Pern is that they went, these are Earthlings who went to another planet to find a simpler life. They intentionally picked Pern, potential Earth, resources negligible, to pick a planet where the resources were not available to become a, Kardashev zero civilization.
Right, but they also like survive through genetic manipulation and
True.
I mean,
But it's our universe, which makes the argument that it's low fantasy.
Again, we could have another 3-hour
Definition that where high fantasy has to do with, like, super high powerful magic and everything. I like the traditional definition because it's very clean. It's very clean. It's either our universe or not our universe. Harry Potter, low fantasy. He gets on a train from London. He goes to Hogwarts.
We can argue about this some other time too. It's 5 minutes to 10, and I've been up since 4.
But yes, I do think that that Tolkien and Howard are actually a good two types of two fathers of fantasy kind of look. I do think C.S. Lewis and probably Lewis Carroll have to enter the chat. Lewis Carroll has to enter the chat. You got to bring Wonderland into this.
Interesting. I've never actually thought. That's interesting. That one has kind of never come up in conversation before.
I mean, it seems like fantasy to me. I mean, she eats mushrooms and goes into a fantasy world where she talks to caterpillars that smoke hookahs.
Well, it's supposed to be a dream, but dreams in and of itself. But it is older than. It's interesting. I'll have to mull that one over. I would say that C.S. Lewis, though, is more like a. I don't know.
I can give you that if it weren't for the fact that Jesus Christ had to come down and like separate them into different parts of heaven so that they could no longer disrupt the perfection of heaven by arguing about allegory.
Okay.
Hey, let's keep in mind, these two were contemporaries who loved each other and wrote to each other constantly. One was Catholic, one was Protestant, one detested allegory, one thought allegory was the greatest thing ever.
Right, but his books would not have existed without Tolkien's.
Would they? I mean, do you think he honestly would have never written the Chronicles of Narnia without Lord of the Rings?
I don't think that they would have been the Chronicles of Narnia as we know them. I don't think they would have even been close.
That's fair. We can argue about that later. let's get through the rest of these comments, or we're going to be here till midnight and 1 o'clock your time, because I have the distinct feeling that you and I could probably go back and forth cordially on these things eternally.
Oh yeah, that's why I love making the topic panels. Oh, pardon me. We're starting to hit now.
Yeah, you're I'm about to say you're an hour ahead of me, so you're an hour ahead of me and we're an hour late. So let's see here.
Well, I run on farm time, so the alarm goes off at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I'm a banker, so I think that's all we're going to check here. Though Mac Thompson has added a significant amount of additional information to this discussion, and does bear some discussion. But like I said, we'll be here till midnight if we do that.
Totally agree with his take on Tolkien.
All you people who are watching this on the replay, you need to go check the live chat and check out the end of the stream where Mac and Zed are laying down some wisdom in the chat. But anyway, guys, Goat, appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you for having me.
To talk about game design, to talk about what it means to be well read and why it's important to game design. And here you go. Take the last 30 seconds or so to tell everybody about you, about your channel, and about the wonderful things and ways they can support you.
Sure. I am the Eclectic Goat. I am on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter as the Eclectic Goat, and I am on Substack as Eclectic Goat Editing. I am the owner and operator of Eclectic Goat Editing. I do novels and game editing. I also write nonfiction and do some research for people. So those are kind of lesser known bits to my job, but they are there. I am in fact currently working on a project where I am studying the history of architecture in England for someone who is designing a game where it's a haunted house based around weird architecture types in England. So talking about well-roundedness.
There you go. There's a reason to buy a game because it's crazy and it has to do with architecture, and it only works because he knows about it, because he read about it.
Well, because he got me to do the research anyway.
Well, because he paid Goat to do it.
Yeah, so I like talking about games, books, television shows, movies that nobody's ever seen or heard of. I am occasionally weirdly deficient in the stuff everybody has heard of because I tend to have really obscure knowledge. Sunday, I am going to be on Sammy Three Peats in Other News. I used to be a co-host for that, but it ran really late, so I had to stop. But he's backed it up early, so I'm going to pop in on an episode. Monday, we are starting the rundown of Harsh Realm, why it failed and how it could do better today. That'll go on for about 5 weeks, and then we're going to do Slice and Dice Season 3. And Tuesday, I am going to be on Jacob Ironside's channel talking Babylon 5. We're starting on the first episode of that. And I feel like there's probably something else. I occasionally, during the daytime, find time to do live streams. I am currently doing Diablo 2. Occasionally, I do Tainted Grail, but for some reason, it seems to glitch out like crazy every time I stream it. So most of the time, I just do Diablo because killing demons is fun.
All right. Find me on ladder.
And I do love new members, and I have the coffee up. I have a neurological study next month that is going to cost me thousands of dollars I don't have. So if anybody can spare the price of a cup of coffee, I'm always grateful. Otherwise, just come back and hang out in the chat and have a good time.
All right, there you go, folks. She really ought to come play Diablo 2 with me because, I mean, my ladder sorceress is on her way up in the new ladder season for Diablo 2. But anyway,
the problem is that I have a chance to play like once every 2 weeks or something. So it's kind of
that's okay.
Sporadic.
I have all my old ladder characters that are like now just normal characters that I never touch.
It's pretty sporadic. So I think I'm doing, what am I doing? A barbarian no, I'm doing the Amazon. The barbarian I'm doing on my personal playthrough. But
hey, I probably got a bunch of Amazon gear because I don't play Amazon. But anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all for coming out. Appreciate you for being in the chat, participating. Appreciate you, Goat, for coming and hanging out with me for now 3 hours and 3 minutes. We are got an extra hour of cool stream time for everybody. Share this with your friends. Share it with your family. Share it with the people you hate and get them to click on it and then get angry and click off and leave me angry comments for engagement. But I appreciate you guys for being here. And I hope that you get something of value out of this, especially if you are somebody who is thinking about potentially developing your own game. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks on the next one.
Happy headbutting.
Happy headbutting.